Ever have that one friend who loves something you know nothing about? Something you wish they could explain better? Well, this isn't that show. Welcome to Drunk Fandom, the show where we have a drunk host explain something they love to a sober guest who is clueless.
Drunk Fandom contains swears and other not safe for work content. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. The Fierce Ferrets do not condone excessive drinking, but if you do, please drink responsibly. Enjoy the show!
Welcome to Drunk Fandom, episode 10, the final episode of this season, Sake Hill, or for our YouTube listeners, Silent Hill.
Woo!
I'm your host, Luke, aka Gideon, aka Giddles, aka I'm having an identity crisis, and I'm here tonight with my wife, Drunk Jen. Like normal Jen, only she's a little bit more free-spirited.
So free!
What are you drinking tonight,
me.
sweetie?
I'm drinking the wonderful Twisted Tea. Twisted Tea, if you're listening, please sponsor us, because I literally drink your alcohol basically all the time. Not as in I'm a drunk, but when I want to drink, I choose Twisted Tea, my choice of drink, because it don't taste like alcohol, it tastes like tea.
Well, you heard her Twisted Tea, that when we're,
Specifically, I'm drinking my favorite raspberry tea, which I feel like shouldn't be seasonal, but is, and it's amazing and my favorite.
Okay. So, we're going to be talking about Silent Hill tonight, and I'm going to let everybody know I really don't know anything about Silent Hill. When I was young, I had a choice between getting into Silent Hill or Resident Evil, and it looks like I chose correctly because they're still making Resident Evil games.
Wow, rude! Okay. First off, everyone had that choice. I made the same choice, however, when I finally started making... no, I lied. When my brother started making his own money, he actually started buying Silent Hill, and that's how I got into it when I was a teen. I keep typing keys, and I don't mean to. I'm sorry.
Alright, so, let's start from the beginning, I guess. Would that be Silent Hill 1, or...
Back the fuck up, Gideon. First off, what is the beginning?
I just asked that.
So that's the problem. I have actually been thinking for weeks how the fuck I start this. No idea. So I guess I'm jumping in. And the reason I have no idea is because they've actually done 3 versions of the introduction to this series. So Silent Hill.
I'm sorry. This is a Konami game, right?
Yeah.
You're sure it's not a Capcom game? Because I'm pretty sure Capcom is notorious with that as well.
So, speaking personally, I've really only played 4 of the games, right? I've watched the rest.
Okay, well, there's no shame here. We've established that in the first season.
No, of course. So, for any listen to my Resident Evil play, I watched Resident Evil 5, or Resident Evil in general when I was like 5. And I was really into Resident Evil. And then my brother and I were real close growing up, and when he started making money, he was like, I'm buying the Silent Hill series because we were really into Resident Evil, and Silent Hill is like Resident Evil where it's spoops, so I'm gonna buy it. And that's how my first Silent Hill game was actually Silent Hill 2. But I'm gonna talk about Silent Hill 2.
I hear that's the one that people say is the best.
Everyone loves it, yeah. That was the first one I played, and I'm not gonna talk about it. Actually, no.
I would hope you would talk about it. It seems like it's the second game.
Technically, I think 3 was the first one I saw, but it doesn't matter which one I saw first. But the point is that Silent 2 was the first one I really got into, and made me go, oh, I need to see the rest of the series.
Cool.
So,
well, where is the starting point
here? I know.
Okay,
I'm gonna explain why it's so weird to get into it. And trust me, this is important. I know you're like, Jen, get to it. But it's important. For anyone who knows the Silent Hill series, you understand why I'm like, fuck, where do I start? So, they made Silent Hill 1... You remember when I talked about Clock Tower? How all the games were numbered weird?
Yeah.
So Silent Hill didn't exactly suffer from that, but they've had a weird lineage of games. So you've got Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, Silent Hill 4, and then they stopped numbering them, and it's Silent Hill Homecoming, Downpour, I think Book of Evil? What the fuck was the Vita one? That's the only one I don't know shit about, and I'm not gonna talk about it, but there was a Vita multiplayer one. And then they made Homecoming, which was a prequel.
Wasn't there one on the PSP, and then they ported it to the PlayStation 2?
Yeah, that was the Book of Evil or whatever. I don't actually...
I think that was literally called Silent Hill Origins.
No. Silent Hill Origins is not the same. Book of Evil was a multiplayer one. We had discussed getting it.
Book of Evil was PS Vita.
What did you say?
I just mentioned Silent Hill Origins, which kind of
Right.
seems to me like it's the, I don't know,
But
titular origins
that's my
of Silent Hill.
because so many people don't consider Origins canon, and a lot of it is because they fucked up with the lore in it. So I'm gonna briefly mention Origins, but I'm not starting with Origins, and I'll explain why Origins is gonna be talked about later, because really, I really should start with the first Silent Hill. There were two versions of the first Silent Hill. There's the PlayStation version, and then there was a retelling they did on the Wii. But it turns out that one was a what if. So for anyone who wants to start off with Silent Hill, don't get the Wii version, because that's a what if. I'll briefly mention it later.
I'm going to note, I played that version, and
did.
because the Wii didn't have high def, it was too dark.
Yeah.
I know like some people like to comment on the DC Cinematic Universe for being too dark.
Yeah.
It's darker than that.
Book of Memories is the multiplayer game I'm referencing. I don't
Right,
know shit
so
about that one, we're not talking about it.
On to the wonderful road
will.
of Silent Hill
But
1.
for anyone who wants a multiplayer Silent Hill experience, there's Silent Hill Book of Memories. I don't know shit about it. It was a multiplayer Vita game. I always wanted it. That's the one I'm not talking about literally at all, because I don't know shit about it. I didn't get a chance to research. Alright, let's jump in. So, starting with Silent Hill on the PlayStation, we're gonna talk about a little bit of background, and I did this in my Resident Evil playthrough. There's a bit of background that you loosely learn through notes, and I think it really helps kind of understand why Silent Hill's so weird. So apparently Silent Hill was like...
I can tell you why it's so weird. It was made by a Japanese video game
Did you
company.
mention which games you played?
It was made by...
You mentioned you played Homecoming a little bit. What other ones did you...
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, if you haven't ever heard of us or seen us in any capacity, I have brain damage. And I don't have memory.
Damage.
Yeah, with less sing-songy
I mean,
personality.
I did it to a
No,
sad tune.
you know what? It adds a delightful twist on the brain
It
damage.
was a sad tune.
But I played Homecoming and I played Downpour, but I have no recollection of the games whatsoever due to the brain damage.
Yeah.
And from what I hear from the Silent Hill fan base, that's a good thing. I can't tell you.
Despite what we go through here, there's some games I would love to watch you replay, to be honest.
Well, I'm gonna have to play them after this because
yeah.
you know we have a horror Let's Play channel.
So, getting into some backstory, and it's really short compared to Resident Evil. Resident Evil, there was way more backstory, but some short backstory on Silent Hill Town. So, Silent Hill was actually a colonial town. So far back, it was around during the plague.
All right, so
When
I'm
the plague-
gonna go out on a limb here and say colonial America. They probably did some fucked up things to the indigenous people.
Yeah, it's
and
in
it
Maine.
bit them in the ass.
Apparently, it's in Maine, is where the Silent Hill in this version is located.
Oh, did Stephen King write this too?
It's loosely based
Wait,
on...
if it was written by Stephen King, they would have completely unsatisfying endings. Do the endings are they unsatisfying?
Silent Hill is a game with multiple endings, which I'm going to talk about a little bit.
Oh, that's great. All right, so Silent
Yeah.
Hill.
So
Going
it was
back,
a colonial
yep.
town, and apparently, which this is why I'm confused. Apparently, there was a plague. You know, Silent Hill was around during the plague. So when you look at the map of Silent Hill is actually split into two districts, basically. There's North Silent Hill and South Silent Hill, and it's surrounded. It's around a lake called Toluca Lake. So that's important because some games take place in South Silent Hill, and some games take place in North Silent Hill, and that's how they cheated the maps being different.
Okay, well,
That's why I mention it.
They're
because
older games. They had
They are.
limitations. You couldn't make everything.
But apparently the town straight up sucked. They had brutal executions, and because of it, it started forming this thick with 2 C's fog around Toluca Lake. There was a thick fog.
Was it a round
Thick.
fog?
It was a round, thick
fog
with 2 C's fog. So fast forwarding.
Just have this image of like a fog monster girl that Twins Play Egg probably would draw. Gonna have to hit
the
him up
twins
about that
are
now.
listening, you're a treasure. Anyway, so which actually they did one of the episodes earlier this season.
Yeah, they
What,
did.
7?
The Common Writer one.
Yeah, I think it was 7.
I don't remember numbers. Just
I'm
like I
sorry
don't
to hear me
remember this
hiccuping.
game.
I'm on my 5th beer, so
Yeah,
you know,
we'll keep them coming.
super drunk. Okay, so fast forwarding, we're gonna start with Silent Hill 1. So Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill came after Resident Evil. So Silent Hill saw the success of Resident Evil and was like, and Konami was like, we need to make a game like this. So they were directly inspired by the success of Resident Evil in their horror genre. And that's why you actually see a lot of puzzles introduced. However, in my opinion, they actually explained the puzzles in Silent Hill so much better than Resident Evil. Remember Resident Evil, where it's like, why are there fucking puzzles here? Could you imagine Jerry coming to work and not being able to do his job because he didn't have the heart key?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we've made comments about
Silent Hill
that.
does a million times better. Well, you weren't. I had to explain this to Deacon. Now to you, I get to joke about this, and I love that. I love you. So, in Silent Hill 1, you play as Harry. He's a dad. And,
Well, that's nice.
I'm not gonna really talk about the movies, but in the movies, instead, it featured around the
Well,
mom.
if you're not talking about the movies,
But
let's move
I do
on
want to
from them.
briefly say, Silent Hill, the movie, was actually pretty good. I recommend watching if you like the series. I actually do recommend watching it. I know a lot of people are mixed on it. I liked it. The games are way better, though. So Silent Hill 1 featured around Harry. He was a dad. He was going on vacation with his daughter, Cheryl. And they're driving in the car, and they see a cop lady on a motorcycle, and it's like, "Hi, cop lady!" And she doesn't wave back.
Hi.
So they're driving, and then suddenly a fucking little kid crosses the street, and Harry's like, "Kid, what are you doing?" And he crashes, because she appears out of nowhere, and he crashes. And when he wakes up, his daughter is gone. So Silent Hill 1 is about Harry, who crashed in this town called Silent Hill, and he can't find his daughter. So as he's exploring this town, he finds out he can't fucking leave this town. The roads are actually collapsed. He wakes up, he goes in this town, he turns
So
around.
this takes place in America, right?
Yes, it's in Maine.
Yeah, that's believable.
It's in Maine. The roads are completely collapsed.
That the
It's like-
infrastructure's collapsed? Yeah, that's believable.
Oh, shit. So he looks around, and there's this beautiful, and they mirror this in the movie, which is one of my favorite parts of the movie, but they mirror this where you go in this alleyway, and the camera twists around you, and it's one of the coolest cinematography moments, especially for a PS1 game, where it loops around the character, and it's so jarring, and this music starts up, and you're attacked by this monster, and you're like, what the fuck? And there's a body there, and it's crazy, and you essentially, quote-unquote, die. Although you don't. You actually just get knocked unconscious. So Harry wakes up, and he's in this diner, and that cop he saw on the bike greets him, and he's like, "Hey, are you alright? I found you collapsed in this alley, I brought you back here, basically." So she rescued him. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm looking for my daughter? Like, have you seen her?" I forgot to mention, he saw her bike on the side of the road. Like, she had crashed. And she's like, "Yeah, so something weird is going on. I haven't seen your kid, sorry. Please take this gun, because I think you'll need it." So she just gives him this gun.
Wait, the cop gave a civilian her gun? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So... I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say this is outside the realm of
by the way,
possibility.
and then a pterodactyl attacks.
Pterodactyl. like the dinosaur.
Yeah, and then a pterodactyl
With the
attacks.
silent P.
Silent Hill 1 is wild, and it had so many things right, but for some reason there's fucking pterodactyls who you never see in another game again. There's pterodactyls, I don't know why. The game
alright.
starts out by you fighting a fucking pterodactyl. That's how the game starts. Sybil's basically like, "Take my gun, I'm gonna go. I have a second gun, because it's America. Of course she has a second gun." So she bounces.
Yeah, that part's legit. Just pulls
And
her
then-
out of her trusty gun belt, and there's like 8 guns
And
there.
then a pterodactyl attacks, and that's how the game starts.
It's like, yeah, we gotta go. We have pterodactyl attacks pretty
Yeah.
much all the time in Silent Hill.
Hill 1, it's a PlayStation game. There's not much substance. It's probably the quickest one we go through, honestly. Basically, you wander around for a bit. I believe you're on... So going back to the whole plague theory, I call it a theory because it's mostly fan put together. There are notes that talk about it, but I can't confirm. So it's mostly a fan theory. There are notes that really back it up, but I believe you're on the south side, because the south side's where they send all the plague victims, and you end up going to the hospital, which is on the plague side.
Okay.
I apologize if I get that wrong. I'm fucking drunk.
All right.
But so you end up you wander around a bit, and you find a notebook by your daughter, who's Cheryl. At least you assume that because it's a child's handwriting, and she wrote to school. So you go to the school, and this is where the puzzles start. And you know, there are weird children demons that punch you, which apparently they're different in America versus Japan. We'll talk a little about later. You go to this hospital, you meet this woman named Lisa. Oh no, I'm sorry, you go to the school, which eventually leads to the hospital, and then you meet a woman named Lisa. Lisa's so fucking sad, and I feel so bad for her. So Lisa is like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I've lived here my whole life, and I just woke up and everything was like this, and I don't remember what happened. Can you help me? And you're like, yes, I will help you. Oh shit, wait, I forgot. Back in the school, before you get to the hospital, is your first encounter, or your second, technically it's your second encounter with the other world. When you got knocked out back in that cool, I was fan geeking about the camera angles, you heard this siren. So now that you're in the school, you hear this siren again. You heard it back before you got knocked out.
Uh-huh.
You hear this siren again, and everything gets weird, and suddenly the walls are covered in blood, and there are child demon monsters, and shit's just going down, everything's bloody, and, you make your way through the school, and then you get out, and, you don't know what the fuck happened, obviously, because there's child demons and blood and shit. But then, you get to this hospital, and you meet Lisa, and she mentions, like, similar shit, where she's like, I believe she mentions the siren, but not everything else. I think she blacks out during the siren. She doesn't really know what happens during it, but, or is she only during the siren? Fuck, I might be wrong there. But regardless, you meet this woman named Lisa, and she's so sad. I think she's actually only during the siren. I think you only find her during siren parts, but she's like, something's weird with this town. I don't know what's going on, and she works for this hospital, and she tries to get you to help her. And you continue to search the hospital.
But did she ask if you had insurance?
She didn't. I think she's a good girl nurse. I don't think she would do that. And then you meet this guy named Kaufman. He's a fucking asshole. But you meet this man named Kaufman, and when you meet him, he's shooting one of the monsters to death. So you confirm, because Lisa is like, I don't see any monsters, I don't know what you're talking about. But Kaufman's like, yeah, there's fucking monsters. Like, he confirms it, and you meet him when he shoots one to death. And he's like, listen, you want to leave. And then he leaves, because he's an asshole. I hate Kaufman.
Are you telling me you didn't want to be here?
Kaufman's a dick. So, eventually, you're going through this game, and you find these notes, right? And you find out, fuck, I'm trying to think how I go through this. You meet one more character, actually, before you really learn shit. Her name's Dahlia. And Dahlia, she's all about God. She's that religious person. Not that there's anything wrong with the religious people, by the way. I don't want you guys to take it that way.
If you're in Silent Hill, there
right.
probably is something wrong with
so
you.
You meet Dahlia. And Dahlia's like,
is she a doll?
Oh yeah, weird stuff's going on, and only you can save us. Take this thing. It's the Flauros, and you have to use it to save us. And you're like, okay, that's weird, but sure, because it's a PlayStation 1 game. So
no one questions anything.
Right, no one questions anything. And Harry's like, what? I guess, sure. And she's like, yeah, you take the Flauros. You know that girl you saw when you drove in? She's evil, and if you see her, you want to take the Flauros and use it to repel her, because she's a demon. So you're like, alright, you know, this is the first woman who actually seems to understand all the shit I'm seeing, so thanks. So those are like the three main characters you meet before you start really finding out what the fuck's going on.
Okay.
So you eventually go back to Lisa after you fight a couple of bosses, and you're like, Lisa, like, I found this tape of you. You find this tape of Lisa, and she's talking about this girl that she took care of in the hospital, and she's like, I don't know how this girl's not dead. She's been burned all over her body. She's bleeding to death. She should be dead. And I have no idea how she's alive right now, but she should be dead. You go back to Lisa and you're like, Lisa, what the fuck's up with this tape? And Lisa is like, oh my god, I remember now. Like, I remember now that, I'm one of them. And you find out Lisa's a monster.
Oh, poor Lisa.
I get so sad about it! And the reason it's so sad, which I should have brought up before, is you find out why Kaufman's an asshole. So Kaufman, who you met earlier, who's like, yeah, there are monsters, we need to get the fuck out of here. Or like, you need to leave, because it's terrible here. So Kaufman is the administrator of the hospital. He's Lisa's boss. You find out that that Lisa, after this girl came in and was burned to death and dying but wouldn't die, and Lisa's like, I need to leave, this is mentally destroying me. And Kaufman's like, yeah, but don't you like drugs? And so he basically was like, if you quit, I'm gonna cut off your drug supply. He basically was like, what the fuck? Oh no! My medicine alarm, I'm sorry, guys. Anyway,
Okay, yeah.
so he basically, like, kept Lisa in through her drug. Lisa was a drug addict. And he basically was like, well, if you leave, I'm not gonna give you any more drugs. So he was like her, what the fuck, enabler. And he was a giant asshole, basically. He basically was like, yeah, no, if you leave, I'm cutting off your drugs. So if you want drugs, you have to stay.
No,
and
Kaufman? Oh, okay, so he was like, he's not just like, I'm cutting off your drugs,
no,
you gotta get
there's
out.
more
He's like,
reasons why
he's
Kaufman...
like, here's some drugs, but
Yeah,
you gotta
he was
keep your
like-
mouth shut, you
he was
stupid
basically
ass.
he was like, oh no, you're having a hard time? Here, have some drugs. Here, have some more drugs. Oh, you're addicted?
what a dick.
He was a fucking asshole, and there's more to it. So you find out Lisa's a monster, and I feel so bad. Because she's like, Harry, please don't go, please stay with me. And Harry's like, you're a fucking monster and I don't know what to do, I'm sorry, bye. And he runs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. I feel so bad for Lisa, but Harry just bounces because he doesn't know what to do.
I would bounce just for the whole, get the fuck out of the town. I look at this character and I'm like, you know what? Monsters and shit, props
So
to you.
during this time, you're seeing your daughter who's like leaving you notes and leading you places. And,
It's one of those twists where he didn't have a daughter.
No, he had a daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
he
that's
had a daughter, no. But the twist is, because I'm basically up to it now. Because, again, it's a PS1 game, not a lot of shit happened
all right.
between things.
Yeah, so PS1 game,
So
what is the twist?
you go back, you eventually go back to Kaufman. Because you're like, yeah, do you know Lisa? Because, like...
Oh, that bitch that I got hooked on morphine?
And Kaufman's like, no, fuck Lisa, listen, take this drug... wait.
Is he a dealer?
He might be. He's like, take this shit. What is the name of it? Hold on. I wrote the name of it down because it's like the Wait.
At this point, we've been watching a lot of JoJo.
He's like, fuck, why haven't you left yet? I don't care about Lisa. Take this drug. You're gonna need it. I have to go and kill Dahlia. Peace. And you're like, wait. What? He's like, yeah, Dahlia sucks. By the way, like, I need to go. Kaufman's awful. But the one thing he does right is he gives you this shit. What the fuck is it called? I wrote it down. I made notes because I'm so drunk. It's called the Agligalope.
Oh my god, I said the lick, and it kind of sounds like
I literally wrote the Aglo whatever plot juice is what I wrote. Oh no. I called it plot juice in my notes. It's called the Aglo whatever the fuck plot juice. He gives you plot juice. And this is important later. So you're still confused because he explains nothing to you. And eventually you go back to Dahlia and you're like, I couldn't find that kid you wanted me to find. But shit's going down and she's like, yeah, I don't care, I found her. So it doesn't matter.
Okay, so Dahlia... Basically, what you're telling me is that everybody in this fucking town is a train wreck.
Like, honestly, in Silent Hill 1, you run around accomplishing nothing. You really run around waiting for people to tell you.
It was a PlayStation
Right,
game.
it was a PlayStation 1. You literally run around waiting for people to tell you, by the way, like, this happened while you were running around. But basically, we go back to Dahlia, and she evilly monologues, and she's like, yes, like, I see you met, you know, all of our minions, you know, from our cult. And you're like, there was a cult? And she's like, yes, I run the cult.
Well, I'm gonna have to kill you then.
Like, I tricked you. And the Flauros, like was just meant to, like, capture Alyssa. And you're like, who the fuck's Alyssa? And she's like, it's your daughter. At least it's half your daughter. So it turns out...
Wait. Did they give him, like, a torso back?
No.
That's horrible.
So it turns out, and this is all honestly, it's explained vaguely in notes, but really it's all explained to you at the end of the game. Honestly, it's all explained to you really at the end of the game. But it turns out...
So did the game come with a disclaimer like, in case you just didn't actually look for lore shit, here, we're gonna summarize.
Basically, like you find vague cult hints, but really she monologues to you at the end of the game. And she's like, I was the cult leader.
Found the villain.
Kaufman was in my cult. Like, she doesn't say that. You have to find that through notes. But Kaufman was in the cult, by the way. That's why he's an asshole. So it turns out she ran this cult, and she had a daughter named Alyssa. Alyssa was born with weird-ass psychic powers. At least it's hinted. To be fair, they never clarify it. In the movie, they made it canon, like, oh yeah, she had psychic powers. In the game, they vaguely hint it. You find, like, memories or some shit. There's one memory you see where it's like she's pulling on her daughter, and she's like, Mom, I don't want to go. And Dahlia's like, fuck it, I don't care. Like, you're magical, and we need you, like a unicorn. So she was born with, like, weird psychic powers, and she's actually Dahlia's daughter. And you find out that Harry's daughter Cheryl, who he's been looking for this whole time, was actually adopted. It turns out, which if you watch in old PlayStation games when you stayed on the start screen and it would randomly play a cutscene while you were waiting?
Yeah.
So if you had watched that, you actually see Harry and his wife pick up this baby on the side of the road.
Oh, so they had a Clark Kent moment.
Yeah, so it turns out that Harry and his wife, who you find out around this point is, like, dead by this time, but we don't know what she died by, it doesn't matter. Dead mom syndrome, doesn't matter. So
it matters to the dead fucking mom.
So you find out that Harry and his wife, like, found this kid on the side of the road, and they're like, we couldn't have kids, let's keep her. And that was Cheryl, and it turns out she is half of Alyssa. It turns out Alyssa was this girl who was born with weird psychic powers, of course to a woman who started a fucking cult. This woman named Dahlia was like, Silent Hill has a weird history and is magical, so I'm gonna start a fucking cult, and that's what she did. With its weird plague history. So there's this cult called, The Order. This cult called The Order, who has been around for apparently ever. And they're like, we're gonna give birth to God. And she had this daughter who had psychic powers, and she's like, hell yes, you're gonna give birth to God. And her daughter, who by the way is fucking 7, is like, I don't really want to do that. And Dahlia's like, fuck you, I don't care. So she did this ritual to try and make her daughter give birth to God. And instead, it's not really explained, but apparently there was a fire. And her daughter...
Why is everybody trying to give birth to God? Just leave God be.
I know. Trust me, I know.
God did a lot for everybody.
Apparently,
creating a weird town full of cultists and shit.
Apparently Alyssa didn't want this so much that she did not want this, that her weird-ass psychic powers, I guess, started a fire. I didn't play Origins. And this is where Origins gets weird, because they made Origins, and I don't want to, like, segue too much, but so Origins featured this guy named Trevor, who apparently arrived when the fire happened and saved Alyssa, and it added some weird shit that no one agreed with. You know when someone makes a story, and then they're like, wait, I want to retcon some things. So they try to retcon. That's Origins. So I don't really want to talk about Origins because it did a lot of weird shit where it really didn't explain anything while adding shit that didn't need to be added. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm talking fast. It's the alcohol.
No, it's one of those things where... did we need this part of the story?
Exactly.
Doesn't really add anything.
The only thing it really added was this weird fan theory about I wrote a note on it. Did I write a note on it? There's this, like, third-party character who supposedly is a bunch of characters, but in different forms. He has a name. I don't know if I wrote it down. It doesn't fucking matter, really. But Origins really didn't explain a whole lot. It just tried to add shit.
The Origins in the corner, just crying.
Anyway,
like, she doesn't love me!
Anyway, so there was this fire, and the police were called, and the cult fled, and apparently only Alyssa was
They
injured.
were called. Did they get there in time, or did they have more pterodactyls to deal with?
No, apparently they took a million years to get there, like with the solder
Well,
children.
the damn pterodactyls flying overhead. You don't want to drive through that.
So apparently Alyssa's the only one who's injured, and remember how I mentioned Lisa was taking care of this burned girl? That was Alyssa. So apparently Alyssa used this fire. It's assumed Alyssa started the fire to interrupt this ritual. It's the only thing she could do. And during it, she split into two halves of her soul split. So you have Alyssa and Cheryl, and then the same person, there's two halves of the same soul. So Alyssa, not wanting this fucking ritual to happen, she split half her soul and sent it on the highway, where apparently Harry found it as a baby. Does that make sense?
I mean, you're asking me if anything about this.
And apparently...
Makes sense.
Well, apparently Alyssa's power was so vast that when this happened...
when
this fire fucking happened, it's kind of cool, because she got so fucking pissed off that she was like, you know what? I'm condemning this town to hell.
Oh.
And that's where what Harry was seeing when those sirens went off is called the other world. Alyssa, when this fire happened, her psychic powers, or whatever the fuck's going on with it, was so angry. She was like, you know what? Fuck everyone in this town. I'm sending you all to hell.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
She created this world called the other world, where it takes a person, it takes their worst nightmares and creates a world out of it. And that's gonna be important later. Okay. But remember how I mentioned how the puzzles had an explanation?
Uh-huh.
When this happened, so when Harry gets to Silent Hill and he's with his daughter, he is actually in Cheryl's other world. He's not in his own. He's actually in Cheryl's other world. There's apparently a lot of key hints to this, and a lot of it is the puzzles. All the puzzles are based on fairy tale themes. Like, I know you hate Alice in Wonderland, but there's a bunch of Alice in Wonderland puzzles, and you find out it's because that was Alyssa's favorite stories as a child. She loved Alice in Wonderland. So all these puzzles, unlike Resident Evil...
Stop deep throating the mic. You're going in the red.
Unlike Resident Evil, where they just exist for no reason, they exist only in the other world because Alyssa made it that way.
So she could create realities.
She could warp reality, yes.
Alright, fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope.
So as Dahlia monologues all this, she's like, by the way, remember your friend Sybil, the cop? She's ours now, and you're gonna have to kill... You're gonna have to kill... No! You leave Sybil alone. She's wonderful.
Do we have to go back to the fuck this shit I'm out segment of this?
But Sybil gave you a gun and tried to help you. She's like, I'll look for your daughter.
Who gives you a gun?
Someone
you don't know them.
Someone who wants you to not fucking die when there's pterodactyls.
Or maybe she was giving you the gun to kill yourself.
No, she wanted to protect you. You leave Sybil alone. Listen, in the movie, spoiler alert, in the movie, Sybil dies horribly, and they end up in purgatory. And you know what happens in this game? If you don't save Sybil, you get the bad ending. So there are 3 endings to the first Silent Hill. There's the good ending, the bad ending, and the alien ending. I'm gonna talk about the alien ending because it's amazing. But anyway, so you remember the algo whatever plot juice that Kaufman gave you?
Uh-huh.
So that's going to be real important later, and it's also real important right now. Turns out, you have to give that Sybil. So she sends Sybil after you as a weird monster bitch. And it turns out the algo whatever the fuck juice is actually made by the cult and stops you from being a fucking monster. So you give this to Sybil, and Sybil wakes the fuck up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah! So it turns out Kaufman weirdly helped you, but still fuck Kaufman, he was a cultist. He was one of the lead cultists, actually. So, anyway, so you can save Sybil, and you have to for the good ending, by the way. You have to save her, or you do not get the good ending. There's 2 conditions for the good ending, and saving Sybil's one of them. I don't remember the other one. Do you want to save Sybil?
Alright, so what is the ending?
Dahlia. So Dahlia is like, are you kidding me? You had the algo whatever the fuck juice? Fine. Alyssa and Cheryl are here now. They're back to being one soul, and they're about to give birth to God. And it's true, Alyssa and Cheryl are now one again. So you're actually greeted with a teenage Cheryl, aka Alyssa. Your daughter was 7, but you actually are greeted to like a 15-year-old Cheryl, because it's been... Actually, no, I think a 17-year-old. I think it's been 10 years since the fire happened. So you're greeted to a teenage version of your daughter. And depending on if you saved Sybil and did the other condition, you're greeted with one of 2 bosses. You're either greeted with an angelic being of God who's gonna murder the shit out of you, or you're greeted with the true monster that quote-unquote God is, who you get to murder the shit out of.
I've always wanted to fight God.
You fight fake God, you kill him. Fake God turns back into Alyssa, who then gives you a baby. It's again the reminiscence of Alyssa's soul, and is like, you know, give me another life. I'm sorry this all happened. I'm sorry you're dragged into it. Like, I love you. Please take this baby. So Harry takes his baby, and
he throws it in the woods.
And he runs off.
And throws it in the woods.
And Dahlia's like, you know, Dahlia dies like the bitch she is.
Oh, good.
And because you're in the other world when this is happening, so the other world starts to collapse, and Alyssa keeps Dahlia there. She's like, "No, you can't leave. You're gonna die with me."
Oh, don't
And
do
Kaufman
that.
tries to leave, but Lisa fucking grabs Kaufman and is like, "No, you don't, bitch." So Kaufman dies if you did everything right. And you and
good.
Sybil escape, and Harry gets the baby, and that's Silent Hill 1.
Now, does he give birth to the baby, or is that
No,
just...
he's holding the baby. Shut up.
All right.
He's
you know
holding
what?
the baby.
It was
He has
some
the baby
weird
already.
shit. Why are you...
The baby is the reincarnation of Alyssa, who just died. Okay? Which, by the way, poor fucking Alyssa. Could you imagine your mom's a cultist and she's like, "You're gonna give birth at the age of 7 to an immortal being."
I could
Fuck
imagine.
Dahlia.
I could
And this is
imagine
why-
a mom
so
doing that.
They did a what if of
They
this
put those.
game.
They put those kids in those little beauty pageants.
So
I
they-
can imagine a mom being that shitty.
They did
They're like, God's gonna favor us.
Oh no. They did a what if of this game. Spoiler alert again, it's Silent Hill on the Wii, and my biggest issue with this game, it is a what if, it's not canon. And it's really dumb, because it's really cool and dumb, because you're given these psychological tests where they actually ask you psychological questions like, how many times did you have sex with your wife? Like, did you have a healthy marriage? Those are the kind of questions you answer, by the way.
And most of the people probably never got married.
No, but listen, the plot twist is at the end of the game, you're not even Harry, you're Cheryl. Why the fuck is the psychologist asking you those questions if you're Cheryl?
Because
They
they
didn't
were
plan
not
this
part
right.
of the heteronormative.
They didn't play this game right. No, but the whole point of the what if is
Okay.
instead of Harry picking up, soul half baby, the plot twist is Harry and Dahlia had a fucking, affair or whatever, and that you're actually his legit daughter. It's this. So let me tell you something. I love what ifs. I love being like, what if this happened? But some what ifs are really dumb and shouldn't happen. This was one of those. I don't agree with the Silent Hill Wii version. Apart from the gameplay being bad, the story was really silly about this idea that Harry had an affair with Dahlia, and that's where Cheryl came from, this whole shit. I don't know. So that's why I'm not talking about it. That's all I'm saying about the Silent Hill Wii version. You can play it for yourself. It's a what if, it's not canon. So let's move on. So normally you'd think, oh, it's time for Silent Hill 2. You're wrong.
Goody.
It's actually time for Silent Hill 3.
That
Silent
takes place
Hill 2.
before 2?
No. But Silent Hill 3 is a sequel to 1. Silent Hill 2 is
Is this its own thing?
Silent Hill 2 is its own thing, and it's important for other reasons. And I'm going to talk about 2 after I talk about 3.
All right. So 3. Let me guess. They both grew old and had a rich life together.
Yes, you get to play as.
Oh!
Yeah!
I'm just not expecting
you're,
that.
You're playing as Cheryl. Only, you know how she was a baby at the end of 1. She was reborn.
Oh,
So Harry gave her a new name. Her name is Heather.
okay.
But it's the same. Heather, Cheryl, Alyssa, they're all the same fucking person. We're all the same person.
Well, as someone who also suffers from an identity crisis, Heather, Cheryl, I understand you.
Yeah.
All right, so they've
so
had a really good life, I guess.
They did. Silent Hill 3, as I mentioned, you're playing as Cheryl, Alyssa, / Heather. And that's not really apparent at first. It becomes apparent really quick, so I don't mind spoiling it now.
Did he ever tell her the truth?
No!
Yeah, that
And
sounds
that's the
like
problem!
Yeah, that sounds like maybe you should tell your daughter that she's a celestial being.
So it's been...
Well, then maybe she might
It's
not
been
take
like-
you seriously.
It's been like 17 years. You're like 17 at this point. 16, 17. Since that happened.
Okay.
And Harry's changed your name a million times. Well, I shouldn't mention, you don't even know your dad's Harry. Like, they did a really good job masking it, but you find out in like the first half hour, so let's just spoil it now. Your dad's Harry, he takes you, hid you this whole time, yada yada. So you're Heather, and you're at a mall, you're doing teenage things, and I lied, you're not at a mall, you're at a carnival. You're at a carnival, but it's nighttime. No one's there. And you're running around, and you see this Robbie the Rabbit. You see this guy in a rabbit costume. His name is Robbie the Rabbit, you find out. But he's covered in blood, and you're like, there's blood coming out of that, that's weird. And you walk around, and no one's there. You find blood everywhere, and there's some monsters. You're like, this is fucking weird. And you go up on to, where do you go? I think you go up onto a roller coaster, and you're hit by a roller coaster, and you die.
Oh, that sounds permanent.
And then you wake up.
Oh, so
And
no
it was a
game
dream.
over.
It was a dream.
Okay.
And now you're in a mall. I almost fucked that up. Now you're in a mall. And you're in a diner. And you're like, whoa, what a weird dream. That'll never happen. So, go over to a payphone. And you're like, hey, Dad. Yeah, I'm heading home now. Sorry. I fell asleep. Okay, I love you. Bye. And you turn around. And there's this dude there. He's like, is your name Heather Mason? Or is your name Heather? And she's like, who wants to know? Because Heather's fucking cool. And he's like, you know, there's someone who's looking for you. She'd really like to meet you, and I've been sent to find you. And she's like, I shouldn't be talking to you, and I'm going home. Bye.
Stranger.
Yeah.
Danger.
And he's like, but no, I've been sent to find you. My name's Douglas. And she's like,
That's
I don't
what
care.
stalkers say.
She's like, I don't care. Bye.
Smart girl.
And I love Heather. And if you know our mod Wombat, aka Jack,
Yeah.
loves Heather too. It's like her favorite character. So she goes down a couple of halls and you're playing as Heather and it's like, yeah, cool, I'm at a ball. And then you wanted this woman. And she's like, Heather? And Heather's like, I don't know who you are. And she's like, my name's Claudia. I've been looking for you.
Wait,
You're really-
Claudia is kind of close to Dahlia.
And Claudia's like, I've been looking for you. Heather's like, so what? I love Heather. Heather was the first, like, cool-ass teenage chick in a game. And Claudia's like, do you even know about your birth? And Heather's like,
I came out of a vagina,
Heather's
if that's
like-
what you mean.
Heather's like, I don't really care. Bye.
Yeah, that's the correct answer. Like, what kind of question? Do you know about your birth? Well, I know I exist, so clearly I've been born. Other than that, no, I never thought to be like, hey, Mom, Dad, what was it like when I was born? Was Mom happy? Because she was probably really going like, oh, no, Harry, why did I let you do this to me, you sick fuck?
And Claudia's like, okay, but you better be thinking about God.
What the?
Heather's like,
No, you never want to think about God during consummation.
if I recall, Heather literally calls her a weirdo, if I recall.
Good. Fucking weird.
But then her stomach starts hurting. And Claudia leaves.
Did she impregnate her?
And Heather's like,
By like looking at her and being like, God.
And Heather's like, that was that was fucking weird. And as Heather leaves, she hears the sirens from the first game. And she's transported into the other world.
Oh, because I was going to say, you know, like she's technically Harry's daughter, so that could be a genetics thing. Audio hallucinations.
Well, Harry had nothing to do with it, if you remember. If anything, the genetics thing would be related to Dahlia, but in any case, so you go through the other world and all this shit, and you run back into Douglas, and you're like, bro, what the fuck? Everything was fine until you found me. And Douglas is like, listen, like, I don't know what's going on either. I'm a PI. You know, my name is Douglas Cartland. By the way, how close is that to a certain mod that we have?
I know.
His name is Douglas Cartland. You know, he's like, listen, I was hired to find you. I'm sorry. I don't know the fuck's going on either. Because he's been dragged into this shit.
I'd be like, Douglas, well, guess what? You brought a cult on my fucking front door, so guess who's fucking helping me?
Heather legit has no idea. Harry has never told her. She actually has no clue.
Yeah. That's probably not going to end well for either one of them.
Oh, I ate a hair, gross. So, as Heather, you fight through some weird shit and all this jazz, and you finally get out of the mall,
Hey, I
get
love
your
jazz.
ass home, and Heather's like, thank God I'm home. I need to talk to Dad. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what's going on with my birth. And,
Big 17-year-old girls constantly wonder about, man, I really need to talk to my dad about my birth.
we need a moment of silence.
Oh shit, I should have realized he died. You know why? Wasn't Sean Bean the guy who played him in the film?
I have no idea. But the
Now
film's
we're
way
Googling
after
it.
this, so that really has nothing to do with it.
No, but didn't he play a character with the same exact name?
I don't know. Can maybe look this up?
Well, now I'm looking it up.
You know, Sean Bean dies and everything because it's God's way of correcting why his name doesn't rhyme.
So he died.
Yeah, so well, now I'm looking up Sean Bean because of you. Sorry, I'm like right next to the mic. Yes, he played Harry, you're right.
Oh, sweet! Called that.
And,
yeah, no, totally should have seen him die.
And the Silent Hill sequel that we pretend doesn't exist.
Wasn't that based off the third game, though?
It was supposed to be, yeah, but it was fucking terrible, by the way.
Yeah. Par for the course, I guess.
Yeah, so, anyway, well, I don't want to go into it because it would take me hours to explain how bad that fucking film is. Anyway, so I normally don't call things bad, but I'm very thankful.
Basic,
I'm thankful it didn't ruin Jon Snow's career. So, who played Vincent in that film, before he played Jon Snow. Anyway. So unfortunately, you do find Harry dead, and Heather cries because they were very close. You know, and Heather knew she was adopted. She was aware of that fact.
Good of you to tell him that.
Yeah, she was aware she was adopted, but Douglas comes in because he followed her home. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And Heather's like, "No, are you kidding me? You started all this. What's wrong with you?" And then Claudia's there. She sends a boss on you. You fight the boss. And now Heather's like, "I'm gonna kill this bitch. She killed my dad. I'm gonna go fucking kill her." And that's why I love Heather.
All aboard the pain train.
Heather is such a badass. I love her so much. And Heather's like, "I'm gonna kill this bitch. She killed my dad. I'm gonna fuck her up." And Douglas is like, "Listen, I know I'm the last person you want to..." And I love Douglas too. He's like, "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now. But I do have this file on everything about you and notes your father had left you. He left you these notes that I have. You can have these." So there's this montage where you're in the car because Douglas is like, "I'll take you to where you need to go to fight Claudia. I'm so sorry I caused this." Douglas is really cool. He literally had no idea this was going to happen. He's just a PI who was hired for this. I feel so bad for him. So there's this montage where you're in the car and you're reading these notes, and Heather's like, "So it turns out my name's Alyssa, and I'm this woman named Dahlia's daughter, and she sacrificed me to this fucking god." Bullshit. So this monologue kind of explains Silent Hill 1, and how she finds out Harry saved her, and she's like, "And the worst part is, I'm never gonna be able to thank him for that. I had no idea, and now I can never tell him how much I loved him and how much he saved me from this." And I'm gonna cry talking about it. Because Harry was such a good guy. Like, the shit he went through, and he still saved this baby and raised her like his own daughter. He treated her like she was his blood. Twice he did this. And she's like, "I'm gonna kill this bitch Claudia. I'm gonna kill her." So,
I mean...
Oh, and I should mention, Claudia told Heather where to meet her. That's how she knows where to go. Claudia said, "Meet me here. We'll end this." Claudia, of course, means something different. But Heather's like, "No, I'm gonna kill you." So, you go to Silent Hill. That's where she tells you to meet you, in Silent Hill. The game starts out, in case you didn't realize, outside of Silent Hill. You're in whatever the fuck town Harry escaped to. Actually, there were comic books between Silent Hill 1 and this game about Harry being on the run. Harry's actually killed people. Cultists have been chasing him for years, and he's killed all of them to protect Heather. Harry was a boss, yeah.
My dad.
They never talk about it in the games, but
off the cultists.
There were actually
dad.
there were actually comics about it. He traveled all across America trying to escape these fucking cultists. I don't remember where Heather is when the game starts. Oof. I don't know if it's mentioned. Yeah, he tried so hard to get away from these people, and then unfortunately Douglas ruined it. And it's really not his fault. He's just doing his job. So you get to Silent Hill, and you go through the usual places: the hospital, the school, yada yada. And you're picking up notes, you're learning about the first game. Because, you know, this is on PS2. So, you know, new gen, new stuff. Actually, Silent Hill 3 was made in 1 year.
Okay.
One
well,
year.
That's
How
impressive.
intense is that? It was made in a year.
Well, you look at the people who made it, and you're like,
well, they were able to use a lot from Silent Hill 2, which I'm going to talk about. But in any case, so as you're exploring, you meet this guy named Vincent. And Vincent, you find out, is a rich bitch. He's a rich bitch. And he freely admits he's a part of this cult. He freely admits that he and Claudia are a part of this cult, but he doesn't agree with Claudia. In fact, he wants you to kill Claudia. He loosely hints that he would be totally fine with you killing Claudia, because he completely disagrees with her. He talks about how Claudia wants to revive God, whereas Vincent is like, God's cool and all, but I don't think he should come back. I don't think that's a great idea. Which is weird to me, but he basically tries to convince you, like, oh yeah, you should totally kill Claudia. Not that it's my idea, it's totally your idea. You know, he tries to totally, like, salesman it to you. Like, oh, you came up with the idea. You should totally kill Claudia. It's not my idea, it's your idea. That's brilliant. Vincent's all like, charisma 10, you know, or charisma 20. What the fuck's a high charisma? Luke, help me. Charisma 30.
yeah, that's definitely a high one.
He tries to charisma 30 it.
But he doesn't, though.
No, he gives us this weird-ass vibe, and Heather's like, I'm not falling for your shit.
Okay, so, like, let's be real. Everybody's being given off that vibe.
He's in the cult. He really admits he's in the cult. And he's like, no, I'm right. Claudia's an idiot. I'm right. Like, God is cool and all and has great ideas, but if he came back, he wouldn't understand what life is like for the rest of us, and he would do things wrong. Like, Vincent's fucking weird in his ideas, but I guess everyone's weird because they're all in a fucking cult. So anyway, Heather's like, yeah, I don't care, I'm killing her anyway. And Vincent's like, cool, yeah, go kill her. So, you go off and you're hunting for Claudia this whole time. You go to the hospital, the school, you finally find her. And she's in this church, and she looks at you and goes, you even realize that you're carrying the greatest gift to humankind? And Heather's stomach starts hurting.
No, she's not pregnant,
like,
is she?
yeah, she's carrying God right now. It's the time. But,
that is not the thing you want to give birth to.
But,
yeah.
During this time, Vincent comes up, right? And Vincent's like, Claudia, man, this is a fucking bad idea. We need to end this. And Claudia's like, no, fuck you. So they have a fight, and Claudia stabs a bitch. She actually kills Vincent.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, she murders the shit out of Vincent, which throughout the whole game's kind of weird. There's been more game time between this point, but it's a PS2 game. You know, you're running around, you're investigating things, Vincent's being weird. Not a whole lot's going on. But basically, you know, at the end of the day, Claudia murders Vincent, and you're like, well, he was the 1% who was still being a bitch and wanted to manipulate me into killing you. Okay. Well, that's happening. Heather remembers this locket her dad gave her. Remember the algo whatever the fuck plot juice?
Yeah. That in her amulet.
Harry put it in this amulet and gave it to Cheryl. And said, when the time comes, you'll know what this is for.
I guess realizing, hey, I'm about to give birth to God.
Yeah.
Maybe I should...
So Heather...
Wait, is that basically just the morning after pill?
Basically. And Heather's like,
Jesus.
oh shit, my dad prepared me for this. And gulps down the liquid in her amulet. And throws up God. She throws up this little baby fetus.
Oh, that's...
Which, sorry, trigger alert.
That is
throws up this little baby fetus, yeah.
Well,
no, it gets
Silent
worse.
Hill's always been
it
gross.
gets worse. Do not be eating while you're listening to this podcast. Are you eating?
No, I'm good.
So, Heather throws up this fetus.
Yeah.
And Claudia goes, no, baby God, no. And she eats the fetus.
Wow.
She eats the fetus and says, you don't understand. God's gonna save us, so I will birth him. And Heather's like, Claudia, you're fucking insane.
Also, that's not how birth works.
Yeah, it's so nasty. It's so nasty. So Claudia eats this fetus.
You're basically gonna not give birth to God. You're gonna shit God out.
So I'm gonna note here for a second. Side note. If you've been reading the story notes throughout the game, you actually find out that Claudia and Alyssa were best friends as kids. Claudia is the same age as Alyssa would be if she hadn't been reborn twice. Which is like 35, I think, now. It's been a long-ass time. So Claudia was actually best friends with Alyssa back in the day when she was Dahlia's daughter. And they're like the same age. So Claudia, throughout all of this, is actually doing it out of a deep love for Alyssa, as warped as that is. She actually gives a shit about Alyssa, and she wants God to be born, and she believes in this whole bullshit. And it's like, Claudia, this is not how you be best friends. You don't encourage the birth of a wrath demon who's gonna murder us all. So that's just my personal thoughts. But, I think Heather even channels Alyssa at one point. She tries to trick Claudia, I think, by channeling Alyssa. I don't remember. I'm trying to skip a lot of the shit that didn't matter. But in any case, so Claudia eats this fetus. And, God is born. God absorbs her life form, Claudia dies, and is born. So here's the funny thing about this, like, God they've been loving so much, who is finally born. It turns out that this God thing envelops whoever gives birth to it, like, their true essence or whatever. Apparently, Claudia thought Alyssa was, like, a goddess saint of this cult. So this thing is born with, like, a bajillion wings and trying to look like this angelic being, while really looking like a total turd, honestly. Oh, this is where I mentioned it. Remember the thing I mentioned about Origins? How it explained this one monster? I can't remember the name of it. I put the note here like an idiot. I'll get back into that later. Are you following along? Am I...
I mean...
You've been very quiet, so I don't know if I'm losing you.
Well, somebody ate God, then is basically birthing it again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, like, I'm just, well, I'm not gonna say enjoying the ride, but I'm definitely on the ride.
So yeah,
the ride is taking some weird stops, and I'm like...
I'm sorry, it's taking some weird stops and what?
Well, I'm not gonna say I'm enjoying all the stops to fuck thisville, but...
Yeah.
Holy hell.
By game mechanics wise, you beat up God. Which sounds hilarious, by the way. You beat up God, and God dies.
Yeah, take that, you weirdo.
And, you know, it's finally over, and you get to walk away. And you find Doug. And now, this is where the multiple endings come into play. Every Silent Hill has multiple endings. So, in the good ending, you go back up to Douglas, who I forgot to mention, gave you his wishings and was like, you know, I'm sorry. Please go fight Claudia. I'm sorry I did this to your family, but I want to make it right. And Douglas is great. He really goes to bat for you. He gets injured for you. I think fighting something, I forget what. But you go back to him, and Heather's like, you know, I've come back to kill you. Basically. And Douglas is like, well, shit. And if it's a good ending, Heather goes, nah, I'm just kidding. But if it's the bad ending, she became God and actually fucking kills him. So, assuming you got the good ending, because we all know that's the canonical ending, is the good ending. She leaves with Douglas. Douglas, I didn't talk about him enough, but he's a really cool character. You find out his son turned to a life... He was a cop, he became a private eye, he retired and became a private eye, and his son turned to a life of crime. So he really tries to go back to bat for Heather because his son turned to a life of crime, you find out, and died robbing a bank. And he feels like he failed him, so...
No. He didn't die robbing a bank. He got shot and died while robbing a fucking bank. Well, it's not the act of robbing the bank that probably killed that fucker.
He basically, like...
The cops.
He looks at Heather and he wants to basically make amends for his son with her. Is a lot where that comes from. So... basically, the good ending is you kind of leave with him. And I assume he sticks in Heather's life. It's never really discussed. They never really continue Heather's story, which is sad. This is kind of where Heather's story ends. And I assume they keep in touch because, you know, her dad died. And they became close during this journey. But It both ends the cult story while not really ending Silent Hill's story, and I'm going to talk about 2. 2 is actually happening at the same time as Silent Hill. Remember how I mentioned Toluca Lake separated North and South Silent Hill?
Yeah.
So, Silent Hill 3 takes place in South Silent Hill, where the hospital is. Silent Hill 2 takes place in North Silent Hill. And they actually take place at a very similar time.
Okay.
And Silent Hill is important in Silent Hill 2 is important in a different way that I'm gonna talk about. But do you have any questions? Am I explaining good? I'm very inebriated.
I mean, that's the whole point of the podcast, but...
Oh my god, it is.
Yeah.
It is the point.
No, none of this is making sense, but that's because this is some Konami shit.
Well, yeah. What do you mean? It makes a little sense, right? Well, oh.
Yeah, it makes sense as cults are bad.
Back when I mentioned, this is gonna be like a 2-minute brief interlude. Back when I mentioned Origins and how it explained a thing, but I don't remember what, I found my note on it. So, there's a special monster in Silent Hill, in all the Silent Hill games, and every time you see him, he's like turning a wheel, or somehow following the protagonist. So Origins, for some reason, decided to, I guess, explain what he is. His name's Velatiel. Apparently he's God's attendant. And apparently, whenever you see him, he's like following Alyssa or taking care of Alyssa. And one of the popular fan theories is he's also Pyramid Head, who I'm going to bring up in Silent Hill 2, and the Butcher in Origins. Apparently, supposedly, he's this monster who is constantly concerned about, you know, the other world and taking care of it and taking care of Alyssa and her creation. I don't know if it's ever really confirmed, but I figured I'd mention it, because that's really the only point of Origins is it mentions this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the fucking point of it, honestly. I didn't really play Origins.
I like how we're not going to talk. We go from not talking about Origins to periodically, here's a little tidbit from Origins.
Because I threw my note about it in the middle of all these notes for some reason, so it's really my own fault. Oh!
No.
Before I leave Silent Hill 3, the alien endings. So in Silent Hill, in all the Silent Hill games, there's something called an alien ending. I just want to mention because it's fucking hilarious. In Silent Hill 1, you can pick up the keys to the doghouse. And there's a doghouse in the game where if you talk to it, you're brought to an alien console. And it turns out that all of Silent Hill is being controlled by aliens. And you look to this dog and you're like, you were doing this the whole time? And the dog is like, arf, arf, lick, lick.
Yeah, that's some Konami shit right there. They're kind of notorious about that.
In Silent Hill 3, they continue with this another alien ending, where Harry, the main character from 2, James, are sitting there, and they look at Heather, and Harry is like, oh yeah, I called in the aliens to destroy Silent Hill 2. Let's all go have dinner and live together forever, basically. So in this alien ending, everything's fine, the aliens destroy Silent Hill, and they all are just having tea.
Good.
Oh! And there's another ending in Silent Hill 3, where you can give Heather, it's not an ending, it's actually a whole gameplay style. You can give Heather a magic girl costume, and she can shoot lasers as a weapon. You can play the whole game that way. She has an outfit and fucking everything. Alright. Oh,
I like when games do that.
I'm Silent Hill 2. What time are we at, by the way?
We're at 1 hour and 8 minutes.
Okay, good, because Silent Hill 2 is pretty quick. Okay. So here's where Silent Hill 2 comes in. The reason I saved this out of order is because Silent Hill 2 has nothing to really do with the first two, except for the fact that it takes place in Silent Hill.
No, it has nothing to do with Origins,
yeah.
Silent Hill 1,
yeah.
Silent Hill 3.
Yep.
It's its own fucking narrative. That's what we're getting.
I'm gonna start by saying to anyone who somehow hasn't played Silent Hill 2, doesn't know anything about Silent Hill 2, I'm gonna trigger warn you right now. Silent Hill 2 contains themes of depression, suicide, and sexual abuse.
Oh.
I'm throwing that out there right now. It is the most triggering game in the series. That being said, Silent Hill 2 has no real explanation, and that's one of the reasons why it became such a cult classic. A lot of it is interpretation, Because none of the endings make fucking sense. I'm gonna tell you that right now. If you're playing Silent Hill 2 for some kind of closure, you're not gonna get it. There are 7 endings to Silent Hill 2. 7.
I hate when games do
Yeah.
that.
Silent Hill 2
Did you know that Chrono Trigger had over 20 endings? And they're all
Jesus.
different?
Silent Hill 2 is literally a psychological experience. I'm gonna tell you all the facts about it.
There was just... I don't know. It's a psychological experience. It sounds fucking life.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason Silent Hill 2 is so famous. I'm gonna talk about all the facts about the game.
That's so sad because, you know, in a lot of cases, you just can't replicate that after a point.
I know. Silent Hill 2 is literally a defining factor in the horror genre. I'm not going to mention the theme, but it's the first to introduce a theme that people constantly overuse to this day, where it's lost its effect. And Silent Hill 2 is the first game to do it. And it's a shame because it's one of those games. It's kind of like the Blair Witch Project, right? You know how the Blair Witch Project introduced this cult phenomenon you will never see again? That's Silent Hill 2. Okay, so Silent Hill 2 starts with a very famous letter. In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. So if you ever heard that line, it is a very
You should have known that's a
famous
fucking
opening.
lie, though, because it's got thick fog. So thick of a fog
It does.
that you think that it's a woman.
With 2 C's.
Thick with 2 C's. Come to Silent Hill. Fog so thick with 2 C's.
You know, I gotta say, off topic, at least Silent Hill had actual tourist attractions versus Resident Evil, where it was like, look at our orphanage and our police station.
I know. Hey, who fucking makes the brochure like Mike from advertisement and stuff? You're getting fired, Mike.
Mike,
get fucking
suck at
fired.
this. All right. So the
Yeah.
main characters in Silent Hill 2,
Mhm.
are
Right, lean back. My drunk wife, yeah. Yeah, and now talk.
are James.
There we go.
I can't remember if it's Sutherland or Sunderland, and that matters for Silent Hill 4. So I'm just gonna say James. There's James, Mary.
No, I think it's Sutherland because everybody makes a joke about Kiefer Sutherland.
Well, there's a Sunderland and a Sutherland. That's why I don't remember which it is.
Sunder, like
It is Sunderland.
like tear
okay.
asunder. Oh,
And
that
then-
kind of makes sense though that his name is Sunderland because I've never heard that be a name. But like, Silent Hill has always been a thing about breaking down the human condition.
Yeah, it has. Silent Hill
So-
2 is important to Silent Hill in a number of ways, apart from being just a psychological experience. And I will explain why. So there's James, Mary, Maria. There is a Mary and Maria. I will explain why.
They're the same person.
A Laura, an Eddie, and an Angela.
No, are they the same person? They've
We
been
don't
doing
know.
this. They've
We
been doing
actually-
this shit. They've been.
Legit, we don't know.
Oh, okay, because they've
So-
been doing this shit before.
The game starts off where James says, I had a wife. Her name was Mary. And he's looking in this mirror.
What happened to the wife? Did she die from sudden death?
She
Mom
died.
syndrome.
And he said that she died 2 years ago. Oh shit, is it 2 years ago? I'm really inebriated and I didn't write it down. Hold on. I think it's 2 years ago.
Within the last several years.
No, I need to... For those Silent Hill nerds, they specifically know when. Shit, this plot's too long. Alright, I'm gonna say 2 years. If I'm wrong,
Alright.
I'm sorry. And he's like... He's looking in this mirror at the end of the game. Which I want to note, Silent Hill 2 was one of the first games to use something called Mo Capture.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Damn.
And, however, wait, was it? I'm gonna be wrong there. But, however, it was in the early days of Mo Capture that wasn't ready for emotions. The animators actually manually animated all of the voice dialogue. So all the voice dialogue in Silent 2 was manually animated. Because it was in such an early days of Mo Capture, they couldn't do it with facial expressions yet.
Wow.
So the animators actually stared at themselves in the mirrors and talked the dialogue out to animate it. That's how detailed this game was. So compared to Silent Hill 3, which took like a year to make, Silent Hill 2...
don't you miss that level of detail with
I
some
know.
game developers?
Yeah.
Not all of them cut
Well,
corners,
a lot
but
of them
like
is not their... A lot of it is the publisher's fault, but I don't want to get into that.
Well, yeah, publishers suck.
So, Silent Hill 2, all the animations were done manually with the faces. But yeah, PlayStation 2 was the early days of Mo Capture, because remember, in Clock Tower, I mentioned Clock Tower 3 had Mo Capture, and that was PS2. That was the early days of Mo Capture.
Yeah, I got you.
So anyway, so James talks about this letter he received. He's like, my wife died 2 years ago, but I received this letter from her yesterday telling me to come to Silent Hill.
Maybe don't.
He drives to Silent Hill, and he's looking for his wife. And he comes across this woman.
How do you fucking advertise that, dude? He's like, hey, I'm looking for my dead wife. Everybody's gonna think you're a fucking serial killer.
As he walks around the town, it's fucking empty. And similar to Silent Hill 1, because remember, this is Silent Hill 2. This technically came out before Silent Hill 3, even though timeline-wise it takes place around the same time, but which they pulled a Resident Evil there, but I won't get into it. The developers really tried to follow Resident Evil, because Resident Evil at this point had become just a cult classic. Silent Hill really was trying to catch up, and they did a lot of things better than Resident Evil that I'm not going to get into, but in any case, so similarly to Resident Evil 1, you go down this alley, you hear this radio static. I didn't really mention it, but in the Silent Hill games, you would carry this radio around, and whenever monsters were around, the static would go crazy. And it's introduced in Silent Hill 1, not so well, but in Silent Hill 2, you find this radio, and you're like, why is it going crazy? And then a monster attacks you. You pick up the radio, and you're like, that's weird. So this radio informs you of monsters nearby. And you come across this woman.
Okay.
And she's on a bridge, and she's like, sup? And you're like,
sup?
hi? I'm looking for my wife. Her name's Mary. And she's like, that's funny. My name's Maria. And he's like, that's weird, because you look like my wife.
Okay, hold on. That's not that cool, I guess.
So he meets this woman named Maria, and she looks like his wife. So he's obviously weirded out. And Maria, being the creep she is, comes up and is all like, hey, you want to do me like your wife? And he's like, what? And she's like, what? I mean, why don't you follow me and protect me? Yeah, she's fucking wild.
Did she actually say, do me like your wife?
She basically said that.
Jeez.
She's dressed like a stripper too, by the way.
Well, don't shame her, but like, shame her for that. Shame her
not.
for the other thing.
Exactly.
Holy hell. Yeah. Hey, I'm looking for my wife. She's supposed to be in this town. Hey, want to have a fucking affair? No?
Listen, sex workers, I support and protect. However, when a man tells you he's looking for his dead wife, don't be like, well,
no,
maybe
run, because if you're looking for his dead wife, he's got some shit he has to explain, okay?
Maybe I can replace your dead wife. And I'll be real, that's really the writer's fault there, but,
Oh, how so many writers fail to do basic shit.
So anyway. So she's like, no, really, the town's weird. Can you actually protect me? He's like, I guess? Like, he doesn't know what to fucking do.
I guess?
So she follows, and she's like, no, listen, maybe I can help you. Motherfucker. I have all these alarms for this hour. I'm so sorry.
That shit.
I can't. So anyway. Oh, I lied. You meet one character before Mary, actually. You see this girl named Angela. As you're coming into town, you pass by this graveyard, and you see this woman named Angela, and she's at a grave. And you have this kind of weird interaction where you don't know who she's at the grave for. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't know her, so obviously it doesn't really matter, but...
Well, you don't know anyone here except your dead fucking wife.
But, you know, you ask her for directions... Oh, my gunners failed off. When you're asking her directions to Silent Hill, the reason it's important is because she tells you, don't go there. There's something wrong with that town. And you go there anyway because you're like, I need to find my wife. So, you wander around Silent Hill, and Maria helps you into literally the stripper joint. That's how you know she's a stripper. She literally has the keys to the stripper joint.
You know, right. I guess she had a position of power at the stripper club because she was able to, you know, lock up.
There is a Maria DLC. Silent Hill 2 is one of the earliest games to have DLC. There was a Maria DLC. Yes. And it came out with a later version of the game they released. Because, back then you couldn't just download DLC, it was PS2. So there was a later version of the game released that came with this Maria DLC. It was like the gold edition or something. But, I'll get into that later. So, you go on town, lose his wife, you get separated from Maria at several points, and each time you're separated from her, you actually meet another character. Which is one of the weird things about 2 as to why you never meet them together. Which kind of starts leading to this credence that, is Maria real? So, right.
But, like, is she a figment of his imagination?
Hmm?
What an asshole, too.
Right.
So, the figment of your imagination is basically a stripper that you want to cheat with?
Well, so remember how in Silent Hill 3 you learn, or even in Silent Hill 1, you learn how the other world is all about your version of the world. So you start learning things about James's marriage. You start learning about how his wife got very sick. It's believed she got some form of cancer, but it's never really mentioned.
Oh.
Silent Hill, PS2 games.
Yeah.
You start learning how she got really
they kill off a wife and no one
Right.
questions it.
You start learning how she got really sick. She died from this illness. And
I don't miss that, by the way.
I know, same.
That fucking trope of just, the wife is mysteriously killed without any explanation.
Well, it's funny you say that because thanks to Silent Hill 2, there's a lot of really terrible indie games that actually really try to overdo this trope. So I've actually seen it a shit ton of times.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me.
Again,
everybody tries to go on that bandwagon.
Hill 2, well, again, Silent Hill 2 did a trope that had never been seen until this game. I haven't mentioned it yet. You're gonna see why, but you start learning about James's life and his wife, and she was very sick for a very long time.
Did he poison her or something? Is he
I'm gonna get into it. So you learn about.
Was it Dio all along?
Throughout the game, you see a lot of. This is where the sexual abuse thing comes in. You see a lot of sexual abuse with the monsters. You see these very sexual nurses. You meet this character named Pyramid Head, who, again, trigger alert. But he basically Pyramid Head's this monster. You basically see him sexually assault the nurse monsters. That's basically what you see him do in the best PS2 graphics. Right. In the best PS2 graphics they can do, but you see a lot of sexual content. And it leads to this idea that, James' wife was sick for so long, he was very sexually frustrated. And a lot of this idea of how Silent Hill represents you. So there's a lot of...
Whoa. Silent Hill does not represent anyone here at the Fierce Ferret Foundry, good madam.
Your frustrations, you're right. Listen, I'm not saying James is right. I'm just saying what he's feeling.
I'm just saying we are a clean
I'm sorry.
production company.
I'm incorrect. I wrote it in my notes. It's not 2 and 3 that take place at the same time. 1 and 2 take place at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is actually happening during one of the first game, roughly around the same time. I was incorrect there. So you see a lot. There's a lot of kind of innuendos and ideas about how James is feeling. And in fact, you actually watch Maria die several times throughout the game. Pyramid Head actually kills her at one point. You find her sick in a hospital bed at one point. There's a lot of things to make you think.
A lot of things wrong, basically.
Is Maria real? Right. There are a lot of fucked up and even James himself at one point is like, I watched you die. How are you alive? And she's like, no, James. Remember what we went to our special place, which is what his wife said in the note. Meet me at my special place. You actually find her at one point, and she's like, no, James, don't you remember we went to our special place? And he's like, are you Mary? And she's like, no, I'm Maria. And he's like, why are you talking like my wife? It's a really fucked up game. Yeah. Because this woman also looks like his wife. You find a video of a vacation he spent with his wife, and she looks like her. So they really take you for a ride where you're like, is Maria Mary? We don't fucking know. So
you actually find out it was Mario.
So going on the other characters I mentioned, Angela, who you met at the graveyard, you find her 2 more times. Actually, I'm sorry, you find her 3 more times. You find out she's actually, like, schizophrenic. It's actually one of the first people I've actually met, like, seen in a video game in these days that was schizophrenic. You find out she's a schizophrenic woman, she was sexually abused by her father, and you end up actually fighting her father for her and this whole shit, but she is important, because by the end of the game, you find her, and the room she's in is on fire. And you're like, how are you okay right now? This room is on fire, you should leave. And she looks at you and she
Cue
goes...
the "this is fine" meme.
No, she looks at you and she goes like, it's always like this for me.
Christ.
Right. You meet these really tragic characters, and the whole point of Silent Hill 2 is how Silent Hill caters to the individual. That's the whole reason this game exists. It tells you that when Alyssa went through what she went through in 1, she created this world that afflicts tortured souls. And Angela...
Probably shouldn't do that.
Right. You meet this other guy named Eddie. Eddie's an asshole. You meet this guy named Eddie, who you find out is like a sociopath. He's literally just killing people because he's like, well, why shouldn't I kill people? They all bully me.
To be fair, there's plenty of reasons not to. But if you're gonna go route of having to question it, you might be beyond redemption.
You meet Eddie
there.
several times where Eddie is like, this dog was barking at me, so I killed it. And this guy was making fun of me, so I killed him. And when you first meet him, he's like, oh, it was an accident. And every time you meet him, it becomes less of an accident. It becomes more of like, well, why shouldn't I?
It was an accident until I beat his stupid fucking face in. Right?
That's actually basically what he says in one dialogue, yeah.
Oh my god.
He actually goes like, well, he was laughing at me, so I killed him too. Why shouldn't I have? Like, and James literally goes, Eddie, you can't just kill people. And Eddie's like, what? What do you mean, James? You actually end up killing Eddie because he just goes psychopath.
Well, he's gonna kill you because you told him no. And
right.
Then he's
so
like,
you meet
what?
Eddie the sociopath and what the world means to him, where you meet Angela, who's this tortured, abused soul, and then you meet Laura.
Yep.
Laura is probably the most important character in all these characters. She's a little girl. Then you meet her, and you tell her, what are you doing wandering around? There's monsters here. And she looks at you and she goes like, what are you talking about? Like, everything's fine. Are you crazy? And Laura is the first sign that tries to hint at you that Silent Hill is all about how fucked up you are. And she's a fucking kid. So everything's actually fine to her. She doesn't see any monsters. Like, every time you meet her, she's like, what do you mean? I'm not in danger. Everything's fine. And you find out through Laura was in the hospital with his wife, Mary. Laura and Mary were good friends, and in fact, Mary actually wanted to adopt Laura. Laura's parents had died, and they were both in the hospital. It was an accident. And Mary was in the same room with Laura while she was sick, and she actually wanted to adopt Laura, and that's why Laura looks at James and is like, Mary told me about you. I hate you. And that's the first time you learn about how there were problems in their marriage. And oh god, this game is so fucking sad. Shit, I need a minute. Tell me a joke. It's so sad, I'm gonna cry.
Funny joke.
Like, I feel like, you know how you think about things
My boss told me to have a good day, so I went home.
No, but you know how you think about things that happened and they were the first thing to happen of their kind? Silent Hill 2 was such a cult phenomenon that I look at this generation and I'm like, God, I wish you guys could experience what this was. Like, I played this when this game came, like, around the time this game came out, and it blew my mind, and nowadays it hasn't aged well. It's not that great, and in fact, they did an HD remake of 2 and 3. You know how fucked up it was? So, you know in Silent Hill 3, where the fuck is it? Or is it Silent Hill 2? Maria's eye textures? Because you know in 3D, they have like textures that make up the eye and the clothes and shit. Maria's eye textures were teeth in some cutscenes.
Was that intended?
In the HD remake. No, it's not fucking intended. It was a giant mistake.
Oh, the HD remake, yeah.
HD
No,
remake.
I heard their HD remake was like
There
one
were
of
a
the
million
worst
bugs.
fucking things ever.
The fog barely existed, which is the whole point of fucking Silent Hill. Maria's eyes were sometimes teeth. Like, I can't. I'm sorry, I'm dying. I want you to think about that. Look at how sexy Maria. Google Maria. Google how sexy she is and imagine her eyeballs are teeth.
Well, no, I don't have to fucking Google anything. If I ever looked at any woman,
if my
man, or
eyeballs
anything
were
like that,
teeth.
and you had teeth for fucking eyes, I'd be out of here.
It was only Maria. Maria was the only character model who had this problem. And then also, back in the day of PS1, or back in the day of PS2, I'm sorry, even PS1, voice actors were such a rare commodity that there weren't really guidelines on how to properly compensate and treat them. So when the HD remake came out for 2 and 3, Konami didn't know how the fuck to use the rights to the voice acting from the original game. You get where I'm going?
Yeah, they
So
cut
they
a lot
actually-
of corners.
Instead of, because by this point, the game's becoming such a cult classic, they were like, holy shit, we don't want to pay out the ass for these voice actors. So they revoiced the whole game. And apparently it was a train wreck. Apparently the voice acting was terrible. Which is a shame, because they got Troy Baker and what's her name?
Laura Bailey, who...
Laura Bailey. And then those two ended up making fun of the original voice actors when they did a worse job. Which is awful. Anyway, I've gone way off track, I'm sorry. So, I was talking about Laura, throughout the game, Laura mentions how she hates you and how Maria told her about you, and you watch Mary die, how Mary told her about you, and you watch Maria die a shit ton. The whole thing's just a mess. And finally, you remember the opening of the game, that letter I mentioned? In my restless dreams? So at the end of that, she told James to meet her in her special place. And James is like, okay, I need to go across to Luca Lake and go to this hotel, because that was our special place. We spent time there. So you go there, and you find this video in the old hotel room you stayed in. And you watch this video of you and her, and she was sick, she was coughing at the time. And you can tell it looks like Maria. You can see why he was like, you look like my wife, because you actually get to see this videotape. And you're looking at the lake, and and she's laughing, she's like, James, just a goofball. And then the video cuts to James smothering Maria with a pillow.
Well, we probably know that James is an asshole.
Oh,
at this
smothering
point.
Mary with a pillow, rather.
So he killed his wife.
So, Silent Hill 2 was
Wait,
the first...
Mary is his wife.
Mary is his wife. Maria is the weird,
Right,
are you my
again,
wife girl.
back
I know,
it
I
up
always
from
fucking confuse it.
No, back it up from the mic.
Sorry.
You're breathing
Sorry.
into it because you're like, hey, Mary got smothered.
I'm real excited about Silent Hill.
Mhm.
So this is the first game to introduce the I killed my wife trope. This was the game that did it.
Oh,
So
and
the-
then,
at the end
and
of
then
the,
this.
at the end of this
yeah.
video, James has his face in his hands. He's looking down. He's like, I remember now what I did. Oh, I forgot to mention, you know how his wife died 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Every time you talk to Laura, Laura's like, what do you mean it's been 2 years? It's this year. So that's also another fuck trip where James doesn't even know what fucking year it is, by the way.
The guy who reached into a toilet for a kid.
Yes! Ah, you're right. So in this is Silent Hill 2, it came out before 3.
Stop leaning into the
I
mic.
can't help it, just to remind you. So he actually reaches into a toilet and is like, let me get what's in here. In Silent Hill 3, Heather finds a toilet, and she looks at it, and if you talk to the toilet, she goes, who would reach their hand in this?
Wow, the shade right there.
So anyway, so James is sulking after he watches this video and goes, oh my god, I remember now. And there's actually a fan theory.
Investigative Discovery would
there-
like to have a word with you,
So-
James Sutherland.
There's a fan theory about James and his missing time. In the beginning of the game, you can see his car parked when he drives to Silent Hill. And a lot of people theorize that Mary's body is actually in the back of the car. And I'm mentioning that now because it relates to the endings. It's not confirmed, but this is what I'm talking about when I say Silent Hill has no real confirmations. And it's a big fan theory because of the way the shadows are placed and how James mentions how he doesn't want to go in the backseat of his car when you talk to the car. So it's theorized, like there's a big fan theory that this happens very shortly after Mary's death. And James thinks it's been 2 years when it hasn't. And it's not confirmed. So anyway, so after you watch this video, Laura comes in.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, you had made a pact with Laura at this point where you're like, we're gonna find Mary together. And Laura's like, did you find Mary? And he's like,
well,
yeah.
that.
He's like, I'm sorry, Laura. She's dead. I killed her. And Laura,
so he just came out.
Yeah, he just came out. And Laura's like, I hate you. Mary was right about you. You suck. And she runs away.
Oh, she's not wrong. You did suck.
So James feels
why did he kill her?
There's a lot of theories on that, and especially if you
We don't need theories.
Well,
we're not in a court of law. We need answers.
So I'm getting to it because, like, there's this beautiful moment in the game that affects what ending you get. This game has 7 different endings, by the way. It's one of the most vastly different endings game you will find in a horror that's beautiful.
Okay.
And each ending relates to Mary and Maria, and it has one of the most unique, like, how you get different ending things I have ever literally seen in a game to this date. Like, to this date, I would love to make an ending generator like this.
Alright, 7 endings. Got it. Alright.
I'm not gonna go through all 7. I'm not gonna go through all 7. I'm gonna go through, like, some of them. But, so basically, so, when Laura runs off, he feels like he has to go protect Laura. Because Laura's, like, the only real person who's not dead at this point. Angela, you assume, burns to death in her fiery abyss bullshit. Eddie, you actually kill. Because he's like, well, if you don't like me, then I'm gonna kill you. So you kill Eddie. So Laura's, like, the only person left by this point.
Eddie seems like one of those guys on Twitter that doesn't take constructive criticism.
Eddie's one of those tropes where I feel bad because he's the fat person trope.
Yeah.
Where, like, oh, he's a fat, slobby psychopath. You should just kill him. And I feel bad about it because his whole trope is he was made fun of for being fat, and he became a psychopath.
I mean, I was made fun of for being fat, and I didn't go out and kill everybody in the town.
You didn't kill a dog, especially. Yeah. The first thing you mentioned is how you killed a dog.
I like how everybody goes into that, being like, yeah, you know, he killed some people, but the second he killed that dog, man.
Right. And James is even like, what do you mean you killed a dog? And James is like, no, I'm just kidding. See, James, I'm kidding. He's a psychopath. Anyway, so you go to save Laura, and you go to the roof, and Mary confronts you. You go to the roof to find Laura, and you find Mary. And this is the first hint of what ending you'll get, because depending on what Mary is wearing, kind of, like, dictates you to that, but basically Mary turns you and is like, this is where it ends now. And you fight her, and she's a silhouette who's, like, tied to a bed because she got this debilitating illness, and, remember the sexual frustration I mentioned? So Mary was sick for a long time.
Oh.
And a lot of it is revealed how James, even in that videotape, like, James just, he cared for her for so long, and he was so frustrated by it, and in the hallway, this is the part I was mentioning about the ending-defining hallway. This hallway is the most beautiful thing, in my opinion, made in a game that I don't think could ever be recreated. You go through this hallway. It's a long hallway. And there are 2 ways to go through this hallway. You either run to the end and say fuck it to the dialogue that you're hearing, or you listen to the whole dialogue and listen to Mary's pain. Go through this hallway, and it's a conversation you had with Mary. And what I appreciate about this game is it doesn't just frame Mary as this tortured woman. This hallway actually explains how James was tortured. It actually shows the pain of the male protagonist and what he went through. He went through Mary's violent outbursts because she was so depressed that she was dying. And she couldn't stop it. She was sick and dying, and these doctors were doing their best, but she was like, I'm gonna die. Why do you even love me? I'm so ugly. Why weren't you...
he euthanized her, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why people
Less
love
of a dick
That's why
move.
people love James. Right. This whole time you're like, wow, James, you asshole, you killed your wife. But if you sit and listen to this hallway, which is how you get the good ending, you have to listen to the hallway. You can't run through it. If you run through it, you get the bad ending. If you listen to it, Mary's yelling at him the entire time. She's yelling at him for not being there for her, and like, why do you love me? I'm so ugly. Why are you a shitty husband? Like, why do you love me? I'm so shitty. She's going through so many emotions, and James is just there like, I don't know what to do. And he even replies.
And then he just gets the pillowcase and he's like, I now know.
Well, by the end of the phone call, I'm like gonna cry.
I was making a morbid, dark joke, but alright.
Because it's like one of the saddest.
And then you see behind him, it's like the investigative discovery crew has the camera. He's like, go on, James. What are you gonna do, James?
James, I just spilled alcohol on me. But James was literally there every day for her. And she just, like, again, also trigger warning to the existential crises, because she was dealing with facing her own death. The doctors told her there's nothing we can do for you, because this was in the 90s, like.
Well, you find out in a DLC that it's because she didn't have insurance, and that's why they couldn't do anything.
Oh, shit. Well, by the end of her days, James did take her home.
She had a pre-existing condition.
Well, James did take her home by the end of her days, and that's where he killed her, but this whole...
Well, yeah, you're not gonna do it at the hospital, then people are gonna know it was fucking you.
Yes. This whole hallway phone...
They're gonna see you smothering her, and you're gonna be like, no.
Let me cry, damn it! But by the end of this hallway, she literally is talking to him about how she's not ready to die, and how she's so sorry because she knows she's lashing out at him, because she yells at him several times throughout this hallway. And you start to understand what he went through. And he actually really did try to be there for her. He did. He went there every day. He was there all the time. And she would berate him like, why are you here for me? I'm ugly. What's wrong with you? Why are you awful? How come you're not here for me more? You're here for me too much. Like, she couldn't make up her mind because she was dying. Like, she didn't know how to process it, and she lashed out at him. And it's just so sad. I'll cry. But this is Drunk Fandom, I should be funny.
Yeah.
And it's just this beautiful scene, basically, of like, it's something that, again, I feel like can never be recreated, almost, like, and if you get to the door at the end of the hall, and you wait, and you just listen to this whole phone call, you get the good ending. Otherwise, if you rush through and you don't listen to the whole thing, you get the bad ending. So I've droned on this enough, but at the end, you know, you fight Mary, you beat her, and this is where the multiple endings come into play. There are 7 different endings. Each one deals with what happens with Maria. So early on, right before you fight Mary, there's a scene where you find Maria in a cell. This is after you think she died several times. You think she died like several times in this fucking game. By Pyramid Head, by coughing to death. There's so many different ways where you're like, did Maria fucking die? What happened? And even Maria herself is like, I have no memories of who I am. I think I worked here because I have this key for this place. And they really... This is where interpretation happens, because Maria never knows where the fuck she comes from, even in her DLC. So, you find her in the cell, and she's like, remember our special place, James? And James is like, Barry? And she's like, no, Maria, but do you remember our special place? And he's like, I'm really fucking confused right now. There's just so many points where she, like, pretends to be his wife, but isn't. No one knows what the fuck Mary is. They think that she's, like, Silent Hill's version of his wife, but in some endings, they leave together. In one of the endings, they leave together, but she starts coughing. And James is like,
not again.
I guess we better do something about that cough. In one ending, they leave together with Laura, and it's assumed that Laura becomes their kid, and they start a life together. That's my favorite ending.
Well, that's funny, because it's like, that's how adoption
It shows them
works.
all leaving together. There's another ending where James says, now we'll be together forever, and you hear a car starting, and you hear them drive into water. And it's believed... Remember how in the beginning I mentioned how his wife's body's in the back of the car?
Yeah.
So one of the theories is he drives into the lake with his wife, and kills himself to be with her, basically.
Oh.
There's a lot of different variation endings on those three themes I mentioned. And And then there's, of course, the alien ending, where you go to a doghouse with the dog key. And James walks up to this dog and is like, what do you mean? You were behind this whole time? The dog's like, arf. And then aliens happen.
You know, if you translate the dog, it says, it was me, Dio, all along.
So yeah, that's Silent Hill 2.
That's a video game.
Again, it's one of those games that introduced a memorable... You know how, like, Silent Hill 4 came in and redefined horror? That was Silent Hill 2. Like, it redefined this thing that we'd never seen before. Like, what do you mean the husband did it? What? What do you mean this investigative discovery? Like... And it explained the other world. It explained how it caters to a person. And that's why Silent Hill 2 is important. And it's where I'm kind of gonna dive off into the other games, because the other games don't fucking matter. I'm just gonna say it.
They're all their own unique stories.
They're all their own story, and they're about how fucked up Silent Hill is. So Silent Hill 4 happens. Years! It's by the end of the PS2 era. Silent Hill 2 came out at the beginning of the PS2 era. Silent Hill 4 came out at the end of the PS2 era. That's how long it had been. So Silent Hill 4 comes out, and you meet this guy named Henry, and fuck Henry. Henry is the worst protagonist I've ever seen. And this is a lot of people's opinions, the downfall of Silent Hill. In the developer's mind, Silent Hill 4 is about the player being able to experience Silent Hill. So Henry is supposed to represent the player. However, they make a story about Henry, so his lack of reaction makes zero fucking sense.
And a thing that requires, you know, in a game franchise that requires emotions, kind of dumb to not do that. Which is funny because that's the same fault of Metal Gear 5.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't make a game like The Division where it's just your player.
Right.
Just being like, oh yeah, cool, you know, there's my player in the cutscene.
Introduce a character with a story, because Henry has a story, and then be like, oh, it's the player. No, you can't do that. So Henry moved into this apartment.
Alright, you think that's bad? Imagine going into a fucking franchise where, you know, not every game is their own fucking story, but all of them follow a goddamn line.
I'm gonna briefly talk about the other like 3
Sorry,
games.
I'm getting salty there.
I'm gonna talk about briefly, like we're at the end of this video basically. I'm gonna talk briefly about the other 3 games, because after 3, the main storyline of Silent Hill stops being touched upon. It's over. Heather finished it. At this point, even though Heather has killed off the cult is gone, their damage is done, and the other 3 games are about how Silent Hill is exploding into the world. So Silent Hill 4, you're not in Silent Hill.
Oh, okay.
You're not in Silent Hill. You're in this town next to Silent Hill. Your name is Henry. You're in an apartment. You just got this new apartment. And like a couple of weeks after moving in, suddenly your door is locked, like with 8 fucking chain locks across it, and you can't leave.
Whoops.
And it's been locked for 2 days, and your character is literally like, so my door is locked, and I don't know how the fuck to leave, and I don't know what to do.
Did he call the super?
He can't. His phone doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that just sucks.
he's tried going. If you go up to the window and talk to it, he's like, yeah, I've tried waving from this window, and no one's noticed me.
I guess he lives in like.
Even though I fucking hate Henry, they very well explain why no one's come to help him. He's tried yelling at his door. Like, if you talk to the door, he's like, yeah, I've tried yelling, no one hears me. Like, there have been people literally out front my door, they do not hear me. And then, when you start the game, I should have started with this. When you start the game, you're in the nightmare world. When you start the game, you're in the nightmare world, and you walk out, and a little zombo, you know, Silent Hill bitch, tries to attack you. And you're like, fucking get away, Silent Hill, bitch, and you die, and then you wake up and you're Henry. And you know, there's a hint that when you're in the other world that you're not Henry, because there are photos of Henry, and your character's like, who the fuck is this? So, At the beginning of the game, you're not Henry, but then you die and you're suddenly Henry. So, Henry goes through a day of being like, yeah, my door's locked, now what the fuck to do? And then there's a noise, and suddenly there's a fucking hole in your laundry room. And you're like, and Henry...
Wait, he had a laundry room in his apartment?
Yeah, his apartment's fucking
Nice.
sweet. If his apartment's sweet, you can Google Silent Hill 4 The Room. His apartment's sweet before it becomes corrupted as fuck. I wish I had it.
But, I mean,
Yeah,
depending on the
laundry room.
level of corruption...
He has a washer and a dryer and a fucking laundry
legit,
room.
depending on the level of corruption, I may take a look at that place.
So...
You know, it's
Yeah,
tough right
he's
out
in,
there, right there. What's the rent like?
Wait. There's actually a name, because you're not in Silent Hill. You're in, South Ashfield. You're in a place called South Ashfield, which you find out is next to Silent Hill. And so this hole appears in your fucking laundry room, and guess where it leads? You wanna guess?
Silent Hill.
You wanna guess? Yeah, it leads to Silent Hill.
Who'd have guessed?
So this hole appears in your laundry room, and you decide, why the fuck no, let's go there, because Henry sucks. I hate Henry. By the way,
I mean, you're stuck in your
in
apartment
case
and
you
you're
haven't
gonna die.
figured, I hate Henry. He's awful. He's a terrible protagonist. I'm gonna explain even more why. Briefly, I'm gonna go through the next 3 games very briefly. You go into this hole where Silent Hill is, and you're like, cool, let's walk around. Even though there's monsters and shit. And it leads you to a subway, and you meet this girl named fucking... I don't know what the fuck her name is. She dies. It doesn't matter.
Yay?
You meet this girl, and she's like, hey, I'll suck your dick. Can you help me get out of here? I'm not kidding. That's what she says to you.
I mean, granted, if she's also been in a
No. She thinks
Silent Hill-esque scenario,
No.
sucking the dick is not the
she
worst
thinks
thing
she's
you
having
could
a
offer.
dream. You find her, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm dreaming, so if you want, I'll suck your dick.
Hey, I'm gonna be real. A dude wrote this.
No, absolutely. Like, I'm literally not kidding. She's like, her wording is, I'll give you a special time, and she gestures down to your dick. You know what she means. So, and she's also dressed like again, no offense to sex workers, she is dressed like a prostitute again. She dies horribly. You actually find her, this is why I hate Henry. You find her, she is cut to pieces, like bleeding everywhere. And Henry's first words are you okay? Are you okay?
Oof.
No, but are you okay? Not like, oh my god, no, it's, are you okay? I hate Henry so much. And she's like, no, it's cool, I'm dreaming, right? It hurts like I'm dying, but I'm totally dreaming. Spoiler alert, she wasn't dreaming.
You don't
And
say.
you wake up and you hear a news report about how the woman's, I forget her name, I feel so bad. That's how forgettable she is. But you hear a report about how she died. She was found in the subway dead, which is where that hole led you to. It led you to a subway. Where she died in a bathroom. So she died. And this happens several more times. You encounter a dude in another place, although I feel bad because he's like mentally ill, and the game treats it horribly. The game does not treat mental illness well at all. But he's like mentally ill and they don't treat it well.
But 2 did, not 4.
2 actually did a really good job, yeah. Well, by the time 4 came out, a different developer team took hold of it. This is, in a lot of people's opinions, this is where Silent Hill 4 started dipping.
Yeah.
So they didn't treat it very well. You meet this crazy guy, and he's like, oh, there's a cult, and I sacrificed myself to the cult, and he dies. And he's in, like, a garden, and you meet this little boy, and the boy is like, I'm Walter Sullivan, and you're like, that's cool, I guess. And you find out Walter Sullivan's a serial killer?
Ooh, well, that's...
He's actually mentioned in Silent Hill 2. In Silent Hill 2, there's an elevator you go in. I didn't mention it on purpose. There's an elevator you go in where a game show host asks you about Walter Sullivan, because apparently he was a famous serial killer in Silent Hill. So Silent Hill 4 is actually about the serial killer who's mentioned in 2. And I applaud the Silent Hill team for their canonical devotion to that. And we're almost done, I promise. So,
okay.
So you find out about this guy, Walter Sullivan. The reason he went on a killing spree, because apparently what you're encountering right now with all these people dying is him finishing his killer spree. He was apparently caught and executed. And somehow he's come back from the dead and is finishing his killing spree.
Well, that's just not fair.
Right, I agree. It's bullshit. So you find notes about how, in his mind, so apparently he was born in the room you were in. And he believes the room is...
What?
He
Don't
believes
people
the room...
think about going to a hospital to do this shit?
No, well, apparently, like, I forget the story. I think they tried, but she was too far into labor or whatever the fuck. So he was born in this room, and he actually believes the room is his mother. Because his parents gave him up and were like, we don't want this fucking kid.
Well, you know, seeing how he turned out,
well,
we wonder.
Guess where he ended up? Guess who raised him?
The cult.
You remember the Order?
Yeah, the cult.
The cult? Yeah. He was raised by the cult.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And they told him, oh yeah, the room's your mom. And he was told, based on their their weird-ass fucking cult writings, that he had to kill 21 people to resurrect his mother so he could be with her. So, he became a serial killer to be with his mother. Yeah. And apparently, when he started serial killing, his soul split into two like Alyssa. So you get to meet child Walter Sullivan for no fucking reason, by the way. Because it means nothing. You meet child Walter, and he's just fucking there. He has no purpose, and that's why Silent Hill 4 sucks. Like they had potential, and they did nothing with it. So, you have this neighbor named Eileen, who's a badass. You remember how in Resident Evil 4 you had the president's daughter and you had to save her ass all the time?
Yeah.
So you have Eileen, and you find her, and even though her arm is broken, she's cut to ribbons, she'll beat things with her purse. She'll beat things with her purse. She's actually a badass. Regardless, so the whole game is about you trying to defeat Walter, who's, he was caught and electrocuted after he killed 17 people, I think?
So he's like, hey, no, can you guys let me go out for 4 more?
Yeah, so he was electrocuted and supposedly died, and now he's come back from the dead to kill the last, like, 5, it might be 4 victims, actually. Hold on, there's the stripper bitch, the mental guy, the supervisor, and Eileen. I'm sorry, so he killed 18 people while he was alive. He was 4 people short. Wait. Stripper bitch.
21 minus 17 is 4.
Stop talking. Stripper bitch.
Yeah, let's not trust the guy who's not drunk.
No, stop talking. Because the main character's one of them.
He
I don't want to reveal
character.
that. Yeah, the main character's one of them. There's stripper bitch, there's the supervisor, there's Eileen, and the main character. Wait, am I missing a... Wait, stripper bitch. No, wait. Crazy guy, supervisor, Eileen. There's 5, so I was right, it's 17. He killed 17 people. Then he was caught and executed. He was 5 people short. So this whole game explores the other 5 people, which is the stripper bitch who wants to give you a blowjob. I'm so sorry if I'm being rude to sex workers. Guys, sex workers need more rights and deserve to be protected. I'm just gonna say that now. But yeah, so there's... stripper bitch. What is her name? I don't remember. And then there's the crazy guy. I'm also sorry to mentally ill people. And there's this, I'm very drunk. There's a supervisor. And then there's Eileen, and then there's you. And Eileen, apparently each victim has a name, but the only ones they mention are Eileen is referred to as the mother, and you're referred to as the savior? I don't know why. They don't really... Silent Hill 4, again, is considered the downfall of the series because they had a lot of neat ideas, but they really, like, fell flat on them. You get what I mean? Like, they fell completely flat on them. So, he comes back from the dead to kill these 5 other people to revive his mom, what the fuck ever. You find out the superintendent, who's one of the victims who's dead. When Walter was born, he was still the superintendent, and he kept the umbilical cord.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fucking gross. I think even the main character is like, that's fucking weird. Because that's the point in the game, you have to actually go get the umbilical cord to stop him. And you find out that Walter actually came to your room, you have a hidden room in your apartment, and Walter went and died in it. He crucified himself in a hidden room in your apartment. That's how he's haunting it.
Okay, and by the way, the woman who offers you a blowjob, her name is Cynthia.
Thank you, it's Cynthia. Thank you. It was driving me nuts. She deserves a name despite her actions. Despite how she... Fuck. I'm very drunk. I'm so sorry.
I love how every time we have you
Honestly,
on this podcast, it's, I'm very drunk, I'm so sorry.
Do you know what it is, honestly? The writing is just so bad in this game. Like, this game had so many good ideas. For example, one of my favorite spoops, I wrote a note on this. One of my favorite scares is you go in this room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go into a room, you know what's there waiting for you? You know Eileen, the cool bitch I mentioned?
Yeah.
I shouldn't call her a bitch, but Eileen, the cool chick, she was your neighbor. For some reason, you have a peephole into her apartment. I don't know why. So you can actually watch her throughout the game. She's literally your next door neighbor. Don't know why, but you can watch her throughout the game. She doesn't get undressed or anything, which is nice, but she's the one who you have to save. She's referred to as the mother in Walter's notes. In one of the rooms, you find a giant version of her head.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna link you this. This.
Please
I'm
don't.
going to. No, you need to see it. Hold on. Her big ass fucking head. You can just mute this video, but just see, I'm gonna link you this, because you need to see it. I saw it, and you need to see it. Look at her weird ass fucking head. Look at it. It's the scariest room in the whole game. It's the scariest thing in the entire game. You go into this room.
Yeah, that's weird.
There's her giant ass fucking head. No one knows why. It's just there.
Yeah, so this is definitely a case of, hey, we did some interesting ideas, but didn't execute them properly.
Every Silent Hill after 3 had some of the most amazing visuals, but the worst gameplay.
Or writing.
So anyway, the game ends with, like, Eileen, for some reason, even though she's a single woman, starts having mother instincts towards child Walter. So adult Walter uses this to his advantage, is like, oh, Eileen, come be a mom to me, and tries to sacrifice her that way. So at the end of the game, you're on a timetable where you have to kill Walter before Eileen jumps in a pool to save child Walter and die. So you get the good ending through 2 ways. To get the good ending, you need to keep Eileen healthy and never have her damaged. Through 3 ways. Eileen needs to stay healthy and not be damaged. The room itself, which you go back to multiple times throughout the game, has to stay healthy with your candles. You put candles in the room, it purifies the room to keep the ghosts out. And, she has to not die in the final fight. You have to kill Walter before she jumps in the pit and kills herself, or child Walter. Because, you know, she's a woman, so she'll sacrifice herself for a kid, right? That motherly instinct or whatever bullshit. So, at the end of the game, you're met with the most anticlimactic ending ever, which is, again, why people hate Silent Hill 4. The good ending is basically you meet Eileen in a hospital room, she's all healed up, and she's like, that was weird, wasn't it? And you're like, yeah! And that's how the game ends. I'm not kidding, that's the ending of the game.
Yeah, no, that...
Yeah. Or the bad ending, where, like, instead it shows your room being haunted by demons.
Hey, demons, it's me, your boy,
it's your
Henry.
boy, Shane! So, I love BuzzFeed. And that's Silent Hill 4. And the last 2 games are gonna, like, literally, I haven't even wrote notes on them, so I'm gonna very briefly cover them. Because at this point, the reason I went with Silent Hill 4 in depth is because Silent Hill 4 proves a point to the rest of the Silent Hill series. Every Silent Hill game after 3, and even including 2, is literally about Silent Hill's weird, the cult fucked it up, here's a weird story we can tell. So...
Which it seems like that's a good
I love that
formula to always have material to go through. But how do they fuck that up to the point where they can't make any more games?
So, they told the story of 1 and 3, of why it's like that, and 2 and 4 and Homecoming and Downpour, and even Origins fuck things up, I think, but I won't get into that really. They're just other stories about Silent Hill, like Silent Hill 4. Remember how I mentioned it didn't take place in Silent Hill? You were in Ashfield Heights, which was neighboring to Silent Hill. And, you traveled to Silent Hill. Homecoming's the same way. You're in a place called Shepherd's Grove. It's next to Silent Hill. You play as a character named Alex Shepard, which I think is dumb. Because the place is called Shepherd's Grove. I think it's dumb. Your name's Alex Shepard. But what the fuck ever. And you are a veteran of war. You're a war vet. You came back and your brother's missing.
The war. What war?
And you go look for him.
Did they tell you what war?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
I don't think they tell you what war to.
This is one of the few games you
I
actually...
think they're like, you came back from the war.
Well, you played this. I know you don't remember it, but this is actually one of the first games we played together. But I know you don't really remember it because of the black mold. But yeah, it had one, in my opinion, because everyone's different, it had one of the most annoying plot twists. It tried to reminiscent... The problem with Silent Hill 2 is every game tried to be Silent Hill 2, right? So it tried to be Silent Hill 2. It was like, oh, plot twist, you killed your brother all along. Because the whole game was you looking for your brother. Things it did wrong. There were sexy nurses throughout the whole game. Why were there sexy nurses if you're looking for your brother?
Most people on the internet will go, why not?
Well, I mean, you were a war vet, so maybe you were sexually frustrated, but it's just, there were a lot of monsters that made no sense. They were like, oh, look, Pyramid Head, and it's like, but Pyramid Head was a James monster catered to his sexual frustration of his wife being sick. Makes no sense, because, again, trigger warning, Pyramid Head, like, sexually assaulted things. That's your first interaction is sexually assault a nurse monster. It made no sense. So, Homecoming visually was really cool, had a lot of problems. Then Downpour happened. Downpour, in my opinion, was the first real revival since 3 to the series, because 4 sucked. 4 had cool visuals, but sucked. Downpour, Homecoming, cool concept, sucked. And then Downpour was like, you're a prisoner named Murphy, your bus crashed, and you escaped to Silent Hill, and now weird shit happened.
It sounds like you should have just went to the prison at that point.
It was so cool, though, because, like, a cop chases you, and then it turned out your kid was murdered by some pedophile, and you had a choice between whether you killed the pedophile or didn't, and whenever it rained is when Silent Hill came into effect. Silent Hill Downpour was so cool. They did a really... And I know a lot of people, by this point, were done with Team Silent, because they replaced everyone, and all the storytelling sucked, but Downpour was actually really cool. It was done by the music was done by the guys who did the music for Dexter. So cool. They did such a good job. And then, Silent Hills was announced for anyone who knows the PT demo. And this, unfortunately, was the death of the series. Is Kojima and Guillermo del Toro were going to be making Silent Hills together with the actor from Walking Dead. And
yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Norman Reedus.
I don't know what happened, but Kojima left Konami and it all just fell apart. And now PT is unplayable. If you have not gotten a chance to play PT, I recommend find a way to play it. It's such a good, homage to the series, and it's so sad we'll never see Silent Hills. It is a travesty we'll never see it. But,
well, I mean, we're gonna see Death Stranding, and that's gonna be a fun topic to talk about.
Here's the thing. They still own Silent Hill. We might see another Silent Hill game. Book of Memories came out, and that was a multiplayer Silent Hill. I never got to try it, so I can't comment on it.
Nobody asks for that.
I mean, I did.
But it's not like a multiplayer survival thing. It's like a beat 'em up.
But the point is, and where I'm ending Drunk Fandom, basically, that...
For the season,
yeah, is that...
You're not ending anything. You don't have the authority.
Bitch, I've got the authority! No, my point is that Silent Hill was the first in a psychological horror setting. It did so many things right, and it's sad it came to the end it did. 1 and 3 are all you need for the core story. Everything else is just filler. It's cool stuff. You don't actually learn anything story-wise about Silent Hill through the rest of the games. Everything is just, this character's experience of Silent Hill. So if you want to learn about Silent Hill, you play 1 and 3. Everything else is just and I think that's what's so cool about Silent Hill is it's about the town. It's about what the town does to people. And it was so potent, it leaked to other towns as Silent Hill 4 and Silent Hill Homecoming introduced. Shepherd's Grove and Silent Hill Homecoming was this normal town that was right next to Silent Hill, but Silent Hill got fucking corrupted, and Shepherd's Grove suffered for it. It tried to keep out the corruption, but it couldn't do it. And it's just a cool concept that unfortunately died. And it makes me sad.
No, there's been plenty of game franchises like that. It's never pleasant.
But that's Silent Hill.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to not only research that, but to, talk about it. Especially since it seems to be a topic that not only is near and dear to you, but it also brings you a little bit of sadness there because of how it ended.
Again, it's one of the things that, like, here's the thing. All good things must come to an end.
But you want them to go out on their terms.
Yeah. I would have loved to see Silent Hills, which is
I think
plural,
everyone who likes horror would have.
I know.
But you know what? There is a silver lining. Sony hired Kojima and wrote him a blank check, so we'll get to see a vision.
I'm so excited for Death Stranding.
Apparently, it's gonna be weird.
Yes.
Alright.
So what did you learn from my drunk ramblings?
Oh, I learned a lesson that I learned a long, long time ago from watching so many other things. Cults are fucking bad.
Cults are bad, you guys.
Yeah.
Don't have a 7-year-old give birth to God.
Yeah, don't do that. Also, you can't eat God to give birth to God.
You can't, you'll die.
1, you'll die. 2, that's not how you give birth. You give birth through the vagina, right? Or, the slicing open, what is that called, a C-section? Yeah. You don't just crap out God. So, That's what I learned. All right, well, that is it for this season of Drunk Fandom. So, next season we have other fun, adventurous topics.
Next season won't go much smoother than season 2. We've had a lot of delays that we apologize for. And
such is life.
Yeah.
But, as always, have a good time, be safe, and stay salty.
Stay salty.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching our video. Now to give a special shout out to our sponsor tier patrons. Neji Kuma, we appreciate all the support you give to us, you keep the channel growing and the content flowing. If you want to be alerted to when we post a new video, make sure to ding that bell next to the subscribe button. If you like the content you see here, then consider tossing us a follow on twitch.tv/FierceFerrets.
And if you're really feeling the ferrety love, please consider supporting our work at patreon.com/FierceFerrets. We don't make any money here on YouTube, so we rely on the generosity of our Twitch and Patreon subs, listed in these credits here, to bring more quality entertainment to you. And you'll get some great rewards for helping out. Thanks again, friends!
And we'll see you next video.